Chapter 1681. On Sky Thunder Peak, Xiaohua watched as the aura-refining disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect left the mountain gate not far from him in groups or by themselves. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Foundation establishment. Alas, only foundation establishment can truly set foot on the path of cultivation. Aura refining is nothing more than wandering outside the door of cultivation. Who knows how many cultivators there are on this Xiaoyu continent, but how many of them can build their foundation? Think about those individual cultivators. Think about how the heavens abandoned them in the past. Everyone has an unyielding story. Everyone has a legend of resistance. However, the Tao of Heaven is so cruel. Even if you work hard, even if you pay with your life, you may not necessarily gain anything. The Tao of Heaven rewards the diligent, but immortal fate is hard to find. Alas, if you can't build your foundation, if you can't condense your gold core, all your painstaking cultivation, all your efforts will turn into flowing water, covered by the vicissitudes of time. Xiaohua watched the many cultivators leave. His heart was filled with sorrow, and he thought of the matter in Myriad Thunder Valley a few days ago. As Xiaohua expected, Wu Xian wasn't in Myriad Thunder Valley's Immortal's Cave. Even though Master's wife, Zhuo Minghui, sent him a Thunderlight sound-transmitting talisman, Wu Xian still didn't reply, not even a single word. Zhuo Minghui said Wu Xian was busy and didn't have time, but how could Xiaohua not know Wu Xian's thoughts? Although he said he didn't care, he still felt some regret in his heart. Immediately after, Xiaohua stayed in Xiangyang's Immortal's Cave for a few days. Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian reminded him of some matters regarding the experiential learning. There were many matters that were repeated over and over again for fear that Xiaohua wouldn't remember. When Zhu Minghui found out that Xiaohua went out with Xin Shu, an indescribable smile appeared on her face, making Xiaohua look really embarrassed. He wanted to explain something, but he didn't know where to start, so he simply ignored her. It was only a few hours ago that Xiaohua bid farewell to Xiangyang. After obtaining some medicinal pills and reporting to Thunder Palace, he hurriedly rushed over to Sky Thunder Peak. He originally thought that he was already late, but after waiting for a long time, Sun Shu still hadn't arrived. Could it be that something happened again? Xiaohua was somewhat impatient. He was standing at the side of the Crimson Road on Sky Thunder Peak. Many aura-refining disciples were passing by in front of him. This was a very normal thing, but Xiaohua didn't expect that his current reputation was actually not any worse than Xiangyang's. Out of the 10 disciples who walked past him, 4 or 5 of them looked at him with contempt, while the other 5 or 6 looked at him with pity and sympathy. It was even to the extent that some disciples were gesticulating and saying in low voices, "Look, that's Xiaohua that was renowned throughout Dawn Rain Continent during the last Feather Immortal meet. Do you know?" At that time, he was incomparably awe-inspiring. He forced a great circle Qi refinement disciple of the Huanhua sect to enter the foundation establishment stage and took one of the Taiqing sect's treasures for himself. Such a famous person started building his foundation as soon as he came back from the Feather Immortal Assembly. In the end, heavenly law bumped into a knot and foundation establishment failed. Yes, I know. It's him who made the #1 beauty of the Huanhua sect, Fairy Hongxia, and her senior brother fall out. The two of them joined forces to force that unlucky guy out of the Feather Immortal Assembly. Look at this guy. He doesn't have any grand appearance. He's much worse than I. How did he enter the eyes of a beauty? You guys still don't know. It was actually the observing disciple of the Thunder Palace who said that the signs of this guy building his foundation that day were very frightening. They weren't inferior to the signs of core formation at all. That disciple was scared to death. He had never seen such a scene before. But the moment he built his foundation, the signs suddenly disappeared. It disappeared in a very strange way. He's a loose cultivator. When he first entered my Imperial Thunder sect, he already practiced 4 or 5 cultivation methods. Even if this kind of disciple's magic power is heavenly, it's impossible for him to build his foundation. Motherfucker, Xiaohua's sword-like eyebrows rose as he thought to himself. Is there a need for this? What does it have to do with you whether I build my foundation or not? How can you little sparrows understand my lofty ambitions? Aren't you also not building your foundation? Is there a need for the pot calling the kettle black? Xiaohua. A very unfamiliar voice rang out from behind Xiaohua. When Xiaohua turned around to look, a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator walked down from the sky thunder peak. Xiaohua stared blankly, but he didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped forward and bowed in greeting. Disciple Xiaohua greets martial uncle. What business does martial uncle have? You don't recognize me? That cultivator had a fair and clean face and was slightly short. He was more than a head taller than Xiaohua. His eyes looked at Xiaohua as he asked coldly. Xiaohua stared blankly. He carefully looked at that cultivator's face and still shook his head. Forgive me for my poor eyesight, but I really don't recognize Senior. I'm a disciple of Swallow Thunder Ridge. Last time when you came to the Thunder Palace with Xiangyang, I saw you. Swallow Thunder Ridge? When Xiaohua heard this, his heart shrunk. However, the expression on his face didn't change in the slightest. He smiled apologetically and said, So, it's Martial Uncle from Swallow Thunder Ridge. The last time I went to the Thunder Palace with eldest senior brother was already many years ago. Moreover, there were many seniors from Swallow Thunder Ridge that day. I really don't remember many. Senior, please bestow me a name. I'm Zhen Yihong. That cultivator stared straight at Xiaohua. He kept looking at Xiaohua's eyes, as if he wanted to see something. Xiaohua naturally didn't back down. He very innocently bowed. Disciple greets Martial Uncle Zhen. If you're not looking for me, then why are you looking for me? What's the matter? Naturally, I'm asking if you've seen the two missing disciples of my Swallow Thunder Ridge. Zhen Yihong suddenly sped up his speech. Two missing disciples of Swallow Thunder Ridge? Xiaohua's face turned cold. He looked left and right and said in a low voice, Martial Uncle Zhen, when did this happen? I've been standing here for 2 hours. What do the two missing disciples of Swallow Thunder Ridge look like? It's possible that I've seen them. Could it be that the other sects are making some moves against my Imperial Thunder sect? If that's the case, I'd better inform the sect master as soon as possible. With so many aura refining disciples going out to gain experience, I'm afraid they've fallen into someone else's trap. Cunning. I'm asking about Zhen Hao and Jin Ming. Zhen Yihong's expression suddenly changed. He released his pressure and directly pressed down on Xiaohua. Ah? Xiaohua's face turned pale. He hurriedly raised his hands and waved them, shouting with all his might, Martial Uncle Zhen. Martial Uncle Zhen, unfortunately, under the pressure of a middle foundation establishment cultivator, Xiaohua, a late 12th layer aura refining cultivator, didn't seem to have any power to resist. Even waving his hands was difficult. Similarly, there were still many aura refining disciples on the mountain path at the foot of Sky Thunder Peak. When Zhen Yihong released his pressure, the nearby disciples also felt it. They were all like Xiaohua. Their faces were pale, and they stood blankly on the mountain path. There were even a few whose cultivation levels weren't high enough and directly collapsed on the ground. I'll kill you right now. I don't care if you've seen my two junior brothers or not. Zhen Yihong's face revealed a ferocious expression. His hands formed a seal, and the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was pulled, smashing towards Xiaohua. Looking at the murderous aura in Zhen Yihong's eyes, Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. His mind raced. Zhen Yihong's pressure was heavy, but if he released the diamond strength Dharma body, he might be able to resist. However, if he did so, he would be exposed. At this moment, countless aura refining disciples on Sky Thunder Peak were watching. However, if he didn't resist, Zhen Yihong might really kill him. How could the life of an aura refining disciple, especially one who failed to enter the foundation establishment realm, be feared by a foundation establishment cultivator? Forget it. Since Master doesn't like me, why should I stay in the Imperial Thunder sect? If I'm going to be killed like this, I might as well take the risk, Xiaohua thought. His eyes flashed coldly, and his arms moved slightly. He was about to activate the diamond strength Dharma body. In such a critical moment, the only thing he could think of was to save his own life first. Xiao Hua. Another horrified voice sounded in the distance. It was Sun Shu, and there were two other voices shouting along with him.
Hey!
Where did this scoundrel come from? How dare he bully the weak on Sky Thunder Peak? How dare he bully a disciple of my myriad Thunder Valley? At the same time, Xiao Hua's familiar voice rang out from afar. Immediately after, the pressure of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator surged from afar, completely surrounding Zhen Yihong.
Ah!
Zhen Yihong saw that Xiao Hua wanted to move, and his eyes showed a hint of joy. However, when he sensed the late foundation establishment cultivator's pressure, his expression changed greatly. He quickly withdrew the pressure and resisted with all his strength. When the two forces collided, a hurricane was set off. Not only were the rocks on the mountain path rolling, but many aura refining disciples were also unable to stand steadily. Senior Martial Brother. How could Zhen Yihong's middle foundation establishment cultivator resist the late foundation establishment cultivator's pressure? After resisting for a moment, he was mercilessly suppressed. Then, a mountain-like weight directly pressed him down on the mountain path. Zhen Yihong felt a chill in his heart, and he couldn't help but shout. Zhen Yihong's figure gradually appeared on the mountain path in the distance. Master? Xiao Hua couldn't help but shout in his heart. Zhen Yihong didn't seem to see Xiao Hua. He walked straight to Zhen Yihong and coldly looked at Zhen Yihong, who was sitting on the ground and struggling to resist. He sneered and said, Junior Martial Brother Zhen, how can a foundation establishment cultivator be so filthy? You actually attacked a disciple of my myriad Thunder Valley in front of so many aura refining disciples who went out to gain experience? Don't talk about bullying the weak. If others saw this, wouldn't they say that my Lightning Palace disciples are ignorant? Senior Martial Brother Zhen Yihong, please withdraw your pressure. Zhen Yihong said with a pale face. He seemed to be very afraid of Zhen Yihong's pressure. Why would I withdraw it? Why didn't you think about it when you released your pressure? Zhen Yihong said that, but when he saw the countless disciples lying on the ground around him, he withdrew his pressure a little. Zhen Yihong's face turned for the better. He rolled his eyes and said with an apologetic smile, I was just being kind. Damn it, you wanted to kill my myriad Thunder Valley disciple, and you were being kind. Zhen Yihong said with a smile. Senior Martial Brother Zhen Yihong, how could that be? I was just testing Xiao Hua. Zhen Yihong said with a smile. How could I possibly kill an aura refining disciple on Sky Thunder Peak? I just sent Junior Martial Brother out to gain experience, and saw Xiao Hua waiting here. Moreover, Senior Martial Brother didn't come to send me off, so I came to take a look and give him a warning while I was at it. Going out to gain experience isn't like cultivating in the lightning controlling sect. You can encounter any kind of danger. If I, as their teacher, don't give them a lot of guidance, how would they know? Chapter 1682. Of course I'll be the one to warn my disciple. It's not your turn to worry. Damn it, I'll also warn you on behalf of Martial Uncle Jinjia and let you know what it means to bully the weak. Helplessness glared at him and said with a smile, however, we're both in the foundation establishment stage, so I won't be bullying you. As he spoke, he helplessly released his pressure once more. There seemed to be bursts of heavenly thunder within that pressure, and that pressure caused Zhen Yihong to tremble with fear. His body involuntarily trembled, and he was in an even more sorry state than Xiao Hua just now. In a hurry, Zhen Yihong couldn't care less about losing face in front of the disciples. He slapped his hand and took out a magic tool from his storage bag. He urged his magic power to shine in all directions, trying to resist helplessness's spiritual pressure. Unexpectedly, just as Zhen Yihong was about to activate his magic tool and pour all of his magic power into it to resist, the pressure suddenly disappeared. Zhen Yihong was caught off guard, and his magic tool suddenly went out of control. A brilliant light swept past and unexpectedly rushed towards the aura refining disciples sitting on the ground around Zhen Yihong. This is bad. Seeing this, Zhen Yihong's pale face lost even more color. He tried his best to control the magic tool and quickly withdrew his magic power. Alas, this child, not only is he bullying the weak, but he also doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young. I was just saying, do you really think I'll teach you a lesson? Do you really want to make a fool of yourself? You're still a foundation establishment stage cultivator. Look at you, you actually used a magic tool. You don't have the slightest bit of compassion. Not to mention hurting the disciples. Even the flowers and plants on Sky Thunder Peak are not appropriate. Helplessness suddenly smiled, and the anger on his face disappeared. He stretched out his hand and easily took back the magic tool that was attacking the disciples, cutting off the connection between the magic tool and Zhen Yihong. Zhen Yihong was trying his best to control the magic tool, but this sudden cutoff made him feel as if he had punched the void. Not only did he lose control of his spiritual sense, but his magic power also rushed to his meridians like a tide, and he lost control even more. Pooh! Zhen Yihong spat out a mouthful of blood. His meridians were damaged. However, he was a foundation establishment cultivator after all. Under the activation of his mental cultivation method, he immediately stabilized his state of mind. The true essence in his meridians flowed, and in the blink of an eye, he controlled his magic power. When he helplessly saw that Zhen Yihong was injured, a faint smile appeared on his face. He waved his hand, and the magic treasure gently floated before Zhen Yihong. He bitterly said, "Junior martial brother Zhen, you're not young anymore. Why are you so easily angered? Take it. I'm just afraid that your magic tool will injure aura refining disciples. Look at you, do you think I want to take your magic tool? Even if you beat this old man to death, this old man will never bully the weak." You! Zhen Yihong was truly angry, but when he looked at Xiaohua's calm expression, Xiaohua's gloating expression, Sun Shu and the others who were walking over from afar and didn't dare to approach, and the disciples with different expressions, he flicked his sleeve and put away his magic tool. He coldly glanced at Xiaohua again, then quickly walked up Sky Thunder Peak. "Master," Xiaohua's face was full of smiles. He quickly walked over and bowed. "Humph, I just happened to pass by." Helplessly turned around and scolded coldly. "That's why I blocked it for you. Look, if you don't build your foundation, an aura refining disciple is just a fly in the eyes of a foundation establishment cultivator. They can be destroyed with a wave of their hand. This time, if you can't build your foundation, don't come back." He didn't wait for Xiaohua to say a second word and turned around to leave. Xiaohua straightened up and bit his lip. Looking at Helplessness's back, his eyes flickered. "Greetings, martial uncle Helplessness." When Helplessness passed by Sun Shu, Qian Diheng, and Kuan Fian hurriedly bowed. And Helplessness flicked his sleeve, took out a storage pouch and threw it to Sun Shu, saying, "Be careful on the way. Disciple understands." Sun Shu was obviously stunned by Helplessness's storage pouch. He didn't know whether he should accept it or not. He still wanted to say something. Qian Diheng hurriedly pulled Sun Shu's sleeve and cupped his hands, saying, "Many thanks for martial uncle's good intentions." And Helplessness responded indifferently and quickly walked away. When he was far away from the mountain path, he used the hibernating thunder escape and flew away. From beginning to end, he didn't even look at Xiaohua. Sun Shu and the other two quickly walked down. When they arrived in front of Xiaohua, Xiaohua raised his head, still looking at Helplessness's disappearing figure. The aura refining disciples around him who were frightened had already crawled up. Not a single one was left. The disciples who followed behind all had fear on their faces and stayed far away. "Junior martial brother Xiao," Sun Shu called in a low voice, pulling Xiaohua's gaze back from the distance. "Ha, Xiaohua, we meet again." Qian Diheng was far more affectionate than Sun Shu. He stepped forward and put his arm around Xiaohua's neck, calling out. Kuan Fian's eyes flickered. He cupped his hands, saying, "Greetings, junior martial brother Xiao." Xiaohua's expression was strange. He slightly frowned and said with a smile, "Junior greets senior martial sisters and senior martial brothers." Then, Without leaving a trace, he brushed away Qian Diheng's arm and said with a smile, Senior Martial Brother Qian also advanced to the late stage of the 12th layer of the Aura Refining Realm. Congratulations. Haha, you've already built your foundation once. I'm just at the late stage of the 12th layer of the Aura Refining Realm. What's there to congratulate? Qian Diheng said with a laugh, not minding it at all. Sun Shu's expression slightly changed. He carefully looked at Xiao Hua's expression. Xiao Hua's face was completely calm. He glanced around and said, Senior Martial Brother Qian and Senior Martial Sister Kun, where are you going to train? Sun Shu clenched his silver teeth and said in a low voice, Junior Martial Brother Xiao, Junior Martial Brother Qian, and Senior Martial Sister Kun are also coming with us.
Huh?
Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, Senior Martial Sister Sun, didn't you say it was just the two of us? Why did you suddenly change your mind? You also didn't mention it in your summoning talisman, right? When I sent you the summoning talisman, I indeed only planned to go with Junior Martial Brother Qian. Sun Shu looked left and right. There were still many disciples going down the mountain. Sun Shu had no choice but to transmit her voice, but later on, things changed. I had no choice but to change my mind. Moreover, Junior Martial Brother Qian and Senior Martial Sister Kun are disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and the Earthly Thunder Palace. You know them both. That place, they've also heard of it. It's just that everyone doesn't have absolute strength, so they don't dare to go. They were also against it at first, but when they heard that Junior Martial Brother Xiao was going, they decided to go. Besides, there are still many people there. It's safer there. Junior Martial Brother Xiao, you will not go, right? Sun Shu said in the end. There was actually a hint of pleading in her voice. Hee Xiao Hua, you won't turn your back on Senior Martial Brother, right? Qian Diheng had a smile on his face. He stretched out his hand and took the storage bag that Senior Martial Brother Qian Diheng handed to her from Sun Shu. He said with a smile, Look, Senior Martial Brother Qian Diheng entrusted you to us. If you don't go, this storage bag will be prepared for nothing. Senior Martial Brother Qian Diheng's efforts will also be wasted. Chapter 1683. Flying in the air, Xiao Hua's expression is calm. Sun Shu, Qian Diheng, and Kun Fian are flying in front. Their speed can be considered fast, but in Xiao Hua's eyes, they are not worth mentioning. Xiao Hua's face is expressionless, but he is muttering in his heart. It turns out that when Zhen Hao and Zhen Ming were killed by Xiao Hua, there was a reaction in the place where the life tablets of Foundation Establishment and above disciples are placed. The master in charge of the tablets found something unusual and reported it to Thunderbolt Palace's palace master, Thunder Meng Daoist. Two Foundation Establishment disciples can't be compared to Aura Refining disciples. They actually died at the same time, and after checking the report, the two didn't leave Imperial Thunder Sect. They were killed in Imperial Thunder Sect at the same time. This can't help but make Thunder Meng Daoist angry, and this matter is naturally reported to Heavenly Thunder Palace. Therefore, Heavenly Thunder Palace also issued an order to Thunderbolt Palace to find out the truth. Unfortunately, Imperial Thunder Sect is so big, no one knows where the two died. After several days of searching, there is no result. And this time is also the time when Imperial Thunder Sect's Aura Refining disciples go out to gain experience. For the safety of the disciples, Heavenly Thunder Palace also postponed the time to find clues. This is also the reason why Sun Shu only told Xiao Hua to set off half a year after sending the message. Although Zhen Hao and Zhen Ming's disappearance is not as big as Zhen Xie and Ken Mingwei's disappearance, the masters of each Thunder Palace are still worried about their disciples going out to gain experience. They are afraid it is a scheme of Splendid Sect, Xuanyan School, and other sects, so they all ask their disciples to go out together. Sun Shu is a female cultivator, and also Sun Ming's blood relative, so Sun Ming is also worried. Occasionally, when she knows that Qian Diheng and Kun Fian are also going out to gain experience, she works with their masters to gather the three together. Just like Sun Shu said, she is also very unwilling. That place is hidden and the key to cultivating lightning escape. How can others know? But Sun Shu thinks that since she can know, Heavenly Thunder Palace and Earth Thunder Palace's disciples may not necessarily not know. After probing, Qian Diheng and Kuan Fian, who have the same background, really change their expressions. After all, that place is not a place where aura-refining disciples can go. Even if it is the key to cultivating lightning escape, the two have never thought about going there. But what if Xiao Hua was included? Xiao Hua's strength was incomparable, and his speed was also extremely fast. He was the best candidate to go with them. Thinking about how if they had an opportunity, not only would they be able to reach the Foundation Establishment realm, but they would also be able to reach the Core Formation realm. Therefore, the two of them agreed after thinking about it a little. Moreover, they had also agreed to keep it a secret from their master. They had high hopes for Xiao Hua, but who would have thought that Xiao Hua didn't care at all? The lightning evasion was admittedly a metamorphosis of a lightning cultivator, but he didn't need to specialize in the lightning evasion. As long as he cultivated the light evasion to a certain level, he would naturally succeed in cultivating the lightning evasion. He didn't need to take the risk. What annoyed him the most was that the three of them were tight-lipped about where that place was. They were determined not to tell him. They only said that they would let him know when they reached the Earth realm. Thus, even though the four of them left the Sky Lightning Peak, Xiao Hua remained in midair, refusing to fly half a step further. Only when Qian Diheng and the other two promised him many benefits, spoke many good words, and even brought out their helplessness, did Xiao Hua relent. As long as the three of them told him where they wanted to go, he would go. Who would have thought that the three of them would also smile wryly? As it turned out, they only got the general direction of that place from their teacher. As for how to find it specifically, that was another story. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he also understood. This was a place that aura-refining disciples couldn't easily go, so how could their teacher reveal it to them? They could only know bits and pieces. In any case, he was going out to gain experience, so wasn't it fine if he went anywhere? It would be best if he couldn't find anything there, so he didn't need to take any risks. According to Sun Shu, that place is called Mingxi, one of the 10 most dangerous places in the Xiaoyu continent. It's right on the border with the Huan country. The journey will take several months. During this time, I can refine the flames in my body and cultivate the prairie fire cultivation technique. Once I'm done refining the flames, I'll use the fire essence flame crystal to advance my cultivation level to the foundation building realm as soon as possible. Xiao Hua thought as he flew. Master is really ruthless. He won't let me come back until I reach the foundation building realm? Not far from Sky Thunder Peak, 4th Senior Martial Brother Zhen Weisheng of Swallow Thunder Ridge stood there with a gloomy expression. Zhen Yihong's expression was reserved, and he stood at the side with his hands hanging down. He occasionally raised his head to look at Zhen Weisheng. The other senior martial brothers behind him were also in the early stage of the foundation building realm, but they didn't dare to make a sound. 15th brother and 17th brother really did tell you. They wanted to avenge youngest junior martial brother's humiliation? Zhen Weisheng suddenly asked. Naturally, the two junior martial brothers said it. Zhen Yihong answered without hesitation. These words. Youngest brother said it half a year ago. But the problem is, Xiao Hua was only an aura-refining disciple. He couldn't have. Zhen Weisheng frowned, very puzzled. But then, his whole body shook, as if he had thought of something, and an inconceivable expression appeared on his face. Seeing his 4th senior martial brother's expression, Zhen Yihong's eyes also lit up, and he cried out in alarm. Yes, that's right. That Xiao Hua didn't have such a cultivation, but there was someone in Myriad Thunder Valley who had such a cultivation. Could it be like today, that he had been coveting in the dark for a long time, and the two junior martial brothers were ambushed in haste, so they died without any news? As soon as Zhen Yihong's words came out, the several disciples behind Zhen Weisheng came to a realization, and hatred appeared in their eyes. I only had my eyes on Eastern Ridge, and forgot about Myriad Thunder Valley. This senior martial brother helplessness has always followed the rules, and has a good reputation of being cautious and conscientious in my thunderous palace. I didn't expect him to be so scheming. Zhen Weisheng sneered. This matter must be known to Master. He had no choice but to guard the 10,000 lightning valley. Every day, he would be struck by 10,000 lightning bolts. His cultivation has been tempered to an astonishing degree. Just the pressure alone is not something that you or I can withstand. Zhen Yihong said fearfully. That's right, helplessness took action. This is not a private grudge between us disciples, but a dispute between Myriad Thunder Valley and Thunderous Ridge. If Master doesn't say anything, how can we act? Zhen Weisheng said faintly, looking in the direction of Myriad Thunder Valley in the distance. What about Xiaohua? That guy is now out of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and without the protection of Myriad Thunder Valley, how can we just let him go? A disciple whispered. What do you think? My sixth junior martial brother, you've been in the middle stage of Foundation establishment for several years now. Isn't it time for you to go out and gain experience? Zhan Weisheng looked at his sixth junior martial brother Jinming and said with a smile, however, you must be careful when you go out. Some qi refining cultivators are still acting strangely under the pressure of a Foundation establishment cultivator. You have to be careful of the dangers outside. Zhenming slapped his head. That's right. I've been cultivating in Thunderous Ridge for a long time, but I haven't made any progress. If I don't go out and gain experience, how can I improve? I'll go back to Thunderous Ridge with you senior martial brothers, explain to Master, and report to Thunderous Palace. And if you want to go, then go quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be easy to find a place to gain experience. Zhen Weisheng flicked his sleeve and said. His figure flashed, and he used the hibernating thunder escape to fly towards Thunderous Ridge. Xiaohua followed the three of them and flew for a long time. Only when the sky turned dark did he slow down. Sun Shu glanced at Qian Diheng, and the two of them exchanged glances. Sun Shu turned his head and said, Junior martial brother Xiao, we're going to change direction. He just lead the way. I'll go with you. Xiaohua laughed mischievously. He didn't say much and followed the three of them to the north. After flying for a while, Qian Diheng slowed down and somewhat mysteriously landed next to Xiaohua. He said in a low voice, Junior martial brother Xiao, Thunderous Ridge's martial uncle, why did he think of making things difficult for you? Xiaohua touched his nose, cursing in his heart. Sun Shu and Kuan Fian didn't even ask, so why the hell did you ask? Looking at Qian Diheng's mischievous smile, Xiaohua said unhappily, How would I know? I'm afraid it's because my eldest martial brother snatched a dual cultivation partner that one of their disciples fancied, so they want to vent their anger on me? Ah! Qian Diheng stared blankly and almost fell down from the sky laughing. He held his stomach for a long time before gritting his teeth and saying, Junior martial brother Xiao, this is something that happened almost 50 to 60 years ago. You still have the nerve to mention it? Strange, if it's not this, then what? Xiaohua said innocently, Could it be, they thought that the two Thunderous Ridge disciples died in my hands? You! Ha ha ha! Qian Diheng laughed so hard that he almost fell over. He pointed at Xiaohua's nose. Those are two seniors who have built their foundation. Even if you can force Yin Xiaoyao to build her foundation, that doesn't mean you have the strength to fight against them. Don't you still have to rely on Fairy Hongxia, who has built her foundation? If you say you killed the two Foundation Establishment seniors, I can bet Foundation Establishment. Qian Diheng seemed to want to say, bet Foundation Establishment that Xiaohua couldn't kill Zhen Hao and Jining. Xiaohua didn't dare to let him say it. He quickly waved his hand and said, Yes, even you don't believe it. Why do you think that Foundation Establishment Senior did it? How would I know? Qian Diheng curled his lips and said, Maybe that senior's female disciple had some awkwardness with you. TCH, Xiaohua smiled and said, How could I have such charm? Junior martial brother Qian, junior martial brother Xiao, it's already late. Should we rest or continue? Sun Shu stopped and asked in a low voice with an indescribable expression in her eyes. Although she was asking the two of them, her beautiful eyes were staring at Xiaohua. Do you still need to say it? We're still in the territory of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Why are we dawdling here instead of leaving? Qian Diheng said impatiently. Xiaohua looked at the dark clouds in the sky and shook his head. It's late, and the weather isn't good. It's better to rest for the night and continue tomorrow. It's also far from Mingxi. We can't get there in 1 or 2 days. Sun Shu looked at Kun Fian. Kun Fian nodded silently in agreement. All right, we'll do as Junior Marshal Brother Xiao says. Qian Diheng stretched his body helplessly. After flying for a day, I'm also tired. Meditating for a night is also good. Then the 4 of them landed and found a cave in the middle of the barren mountain. According to Sun Shu's idea, the 4 of them gathered together to meditate and cultivate. A cave could be used as much as possible. But Xiao Hua didn't let it go. He didn't go too far away either. About 30 meters away from the cave, he raised the cloud-suppressing seal and smashed open a small cave. Chapter 1684. Seeing Xiao Hua actually use the cloud-suppressing seal like this, Qian Diheng's face was full of resentment. He lamented, "Magic weapon on magic weapon, you are really throwing pearls before swine. This guy actually used you to make a hole. If you had a weapon spirit, wouldn't you be angered to death? You'd better quickly give birth to a weapon spirit and quickly throw yourself into Ai's embrace. I will definitely let you eat and drink well." Sun Shu and Kun Fian were also astonished, but hearing Qian Diheng's nagging, their mouths unconsciously revealed a smile. Their inexperienced mood was obviously relaxed. Seeing that the cave made by Xiao Hua using the cloud-suppressing seal could only hold Xiao Hua alone, Qian Diheng cried out strangely, "Junior Brother Xiao, what do you mean by this? Aren't the 2 of us here, resting?" Xiao Hua smiled and took out 3 messaging talismans from his bosom. He gave them to the 2 and said, "Junior brother has to cultivate tonight. It's best if others don't disturb me. I won't be with senior brother Qian. This is a messaging talisman that I refine myself. If anything happens at night, you can use it to wake junior brother up." TSK. Qian Diheng glanced at Xiao Hua unhappily and said, "It's only a distance of 10 zhang. Won't you know if you shout? Do you need a messaging talisman?" Although they said so, the 3 of them still put the talismans into their storage pouches. When the 3 of them returned to their own cave, the 2 female cultivators cleaned up the inside. Sun Shu also carefully took out some spirit fruits from his storage pouch. When Qian Diheng went out to call Xiao Hua to eat, he discovered that the cave that Xiao Hua had just made was already gone. Illusion array? Qian Diheng was dumbfounded. He scanned with his divine sense and actually didn't find any clues. The location of the cave was exactly the same as the one next to it. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he really wouldn't dare to believe that there was a cave here. Junior Brother Xiao, Junior Brother Xiao. However, no matter how Qian Diheng called, Xiao Hua didn't respond. It seemed that there really wasn't a cave. What's wrong? Sun Shu and Kun Fian heard the voice and came over, similarly shocked. This guy is really abominable, Qian Diheng said fiercely. He obviously has such a rare array that can protect us, but he doesn't want to share it with us. He hides in a place and uses it. Damn it, call him out. I want to have a good talk with him. As he spoke, he took out the messaging talisman that Xiao Hua had given him. Junior Brother Qian. Seeing this, Sun Shu hurriedly stopped him and said in a low voice, "Since Junior Brother Xiao has done this, he naturally has his reasons. You shouldn't disturb his cultivation. If there's anything, let's talk about it tomorrow." "Humph, all right." Qian Diheng looked at them helplessly and turned around to follow the 2 back. Inside the cave, Xiao Hua had long since closed his eyes and focused on refining the flames in his meridians. Now that he was at the early stage of the 16th layer of qi refining, he felt that his progress was much slower than before. Therefore, he didn't want to waste any time. As soon as he entered the cave, he immediately set up the formation. He wasn't afraid of attracting the attention of Sun Shu and the others. Since he would be traveling with the 3 of them for several months, they would find out about this sooner or later. Of course, Xiao Hua was helpless as well. The formation he spoke of was strange as well, and it was quite different from the formations on Dawn Rain Continent. It was precisely the talisman shaped like a rabbit that he recalled in his mind a few years ago. This talisman was composed of 360 talismans, and he seemed to know the refining method. However, there was a problem during the refining process. The talisman characters of the rabbit talisman couldn't be imprinted on the talisman paper. No matter how many ideas Xiaohua thought of, he still couldn't succeed. In the end, Xiaohua had a flash of inspiration. He used the method of refining talismans to find some beast skin and beast blood in the space. Only then did he succeed in refining some of the talismans. Then, according to his memory, he set up these talismans, forming an incomplete rabbit defensive formation. Naturally, there was only one set of these talismans, and there wasn't a second set in the world for the time being. Therefore, Xiaohua couldn't let Qian Diheng and the others use it. As for why Xiaohua wasn't with them, looking at the countless small waves of air rising from the cave where Xiaohua was, as well as the extremely high temperature within half a foot of Xiaohua's body, it was clear that his cultivation was completely different from others. It wasn't necessary to tell others about it. While Xiaohua was cultivating, Sun Shu and the others also didn't dare to be negligent. After setting up some yellow talismans outside the cave, they also seized the time to cultivate. Although there wouldn't be any improvement in their cultivation, no one could say when the opportunity to build their foundation would arrive. The night was very gloomy. In the latter half of the night, there was a rumbling sound of thunder, and it actually started to rain. The raindrops were extremely large, extremely dense, and countless sounds entered everyone's ears. When the sky first lit up, the raindrops turned into rain lines, connecting the heaven and earth. Other than the heavy downpour, there was also the gloomy lightning and thunder in the night sky. There was no other scenery. Unfavorable start. Qian Diheng stood in front of the cave, looking at the curtain of rain, and blurted out, "Pei Pei." Kun Fei Yan immediately spat on the ground and said, "Junior brother Qian, how can you say this? Don't you think it's bad luck?" "It's just a feeling, Qian Diheng hurriedly said. At the same time, a trace of a bad feeling arose in his heart. Immortal cultivators are most concerned about fate. Pills can be eaten carelessly, but some words can't be carelessly said. After Qian Diheng heartlessly said this, his heart was filled with regret. At this time, about 10 zhang to the left of Qian Diheng, a faint light flashed, and the outline of the cave that Xiaohua was hiding in appeared. Xiaohua flew out of the cave. Junior brother Xiao. When Qian Diheng saw this, his face showed joy. He also flew over to Xiaohua's side. At this time, the rain was pouring down. Xiaohua and Qian Diheng stayed in the rain. There seemed to be a layer of transparent cover around their bodies, isolating them from the rain. Their robes and bodies didn't have the slightest trace of moisture. "Senior brother Qian, good morning." Xiaohua cupped his hands, looking at the dark clouds, lightning, and thunder. He shook his head and said, "This kind of weather is the power of heaven and earth. You and I cultivators are not afraid, but after all, it's not appropriate. If possible, we should stay here and wait for the rain to stop before continuing." At this time, Sun Shu and Kun Fian also flew up. According to Sun Shu's thoughts, they couldn't wait to grow a pair of wings on their back and fly to Mingxi in a flash. But Qian Diheng's words just now and Xiaohua's suggestion, Sun Shu could only sigh and nod in tacit agreement. Everyone flew down again. This time, Qian Diheng shamelessly wanted to stay with Xiaohua, wanting to see Xiaohua's array. Xiaohua had no choice but to let him in. Since Qian Diheng came, Sun Shu and Kun Fian also followed. Xiaohua could only summon the cloud-suppressing seal and expand the cave by a lot. Only then did he take out the dozen or so shiny talismans and said with a smile, "This little brother accidentally came across this thing in a marketplace. Because it was incomplete and I didn't know the specific method to use it, it fell into this little brother's hands." Qian Diheng waved his hand, and many talismans fell into his hand. After looking at them carefully, he couldn't bear to put them down and said, "All the good things are yours. This is a formation talisman, not an ordinary talisman, nor an ordinary yellow talisman. It's fine if you only have 1 or 2 talismans, but you actually made a set of over 10 formation talismans. How can I not be jealous? Also, junior brother Zhao's array is also strange. Kun Fian took the talismans from Qian Diheng's hand and said with a strange light in his eyes, "The core of the array is the array plate. You didn't need the array plate to set up the array. It's really inconceivable." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "This is originally an incomplete thing. Otherwise, how could it fall into Junior Brother's hands?" Then, looking at the curtain of rain outside the cave, he said in a low voice, "Also, Junior Brother also pondered for many years without any results. Then, by chance, I found the method to set up the array. Only then could I barely set up the array. Everything was gathered together. Ah, what you got is..." Kun Fian said half a sentence, and then stopped. This was a cultivator's privacy. It was inappropriate to ask too much. But Kun Fian's eyes turned slightly and said, "According to the masters of the Earth Thunder Palace who are proficient in arrays, the arrays on the Siyu continent have been lost for a long time. So now, arrays can only be set up with array plates and array talismans. And some powerful cultivators use jade talismans to set up arrays. They don't use array plates." Jade talismans? Xiao Hua's eyes brightened, as if he had caught something. His rabbit talisman was also difficult to refine on talismans. Could it be that it can be refined with jade talismans? AI, don't talk about using jade talismans to set up arrays. Qian Diheng sighed and said, "I can't even learn ordinary arrays. The refining of array plates and array talismans are all difficult. It's said that it's even harder than refining pills. I also don't have Junior Brother Zhao's good luck and can only watch from the side." As he spoke, Qian Diheng handed the talismans to Sun Shu for her to see. Sun Shu didn't seem to know much about spirit arrays. He only looked at the dozen or so spirit talismans with envy before handing them to Xiao Hua. As he released his divine sense, he said, "Junior Brother Xiao is really lucky. These spirit talismans are rare even for the masters of my Sun Thunder Palace." Excuse me. Xiao Hua took the talismans and said very embarrassedly, "Ouch." Just as Xiao Hua was speaking, Sun Shu frowned. His divine sense seemed to have been burned as he retracted it. He called out, "This mountain is a bit strange. The heavenly lightning is unceasing, and even my divine sense is restricted. Should we?" Sun Shu originally wanted to suggest leaving, but Xiao Hua's divine sense also swept over, and a trace of a bitter smile appeared on his face. "I'm afraid it's a bit late." Qian Diheng and Kun Fian also released their divine sense slightly, and their faces changed slightly. The thunder and lightning in the sky above the mountain was even more intense. The rolling thunder was actually somewhat similar to the thunder in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Even if the four of them were all disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Qian Diheng and the others had thunder attribute physiques, it would still be dangerous to forcibly fly away in this situation. "We have no choice but to stay here." Sun Shu felt some bitterness in her mouth. It had only been a day since they left the Imperial Thunder Sect, and they were actually trapped here. This was clearly not a good start. Glancing at Xiao Hua, Sun Shu was a bit angry and thought to herself, "If we weren't resting here, I'm afraid we would have already flown far away." Sigh. Sun Shu sighed and sat down, closing her eyes and not saying anything. Seeing that the three of them had each found a place to close their eyes and cultivate, Xiao Hua could only sit down. How could he have the nerve to drive the three of them away to cultivate? Without any other choice, he could only take out a jade slip for refining tools and immerse his divine sense in it to check. Chapter 1685. It was supposed to be noon, but the sky was completely dark, no different from nighttime. Streaks of lightning were like sharp swords striking the sky, leaving streaks of light behind. The rain was like the collapse of the heavenly river, endlessly pouring down. In less than half a day, the mountainous area where Xiao Hua and the others were at had a lot of muddy water mixed with small rocks sliding down from the top of the mountain. "This is too strange." Xiao Hua opened his eyes and looked at the mud seeping in from the cave entrance. He didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, he took out a dozen talismans and waved them in all directions of the cave. Seeing Xiao Hua shoot out the talismans, Sun Shu and the others were surprised. Usually, they had seen their teachers set up arrays, but those array talismans were all placed on the ground without exception. However, Xiaohua's dozens of array talismans were placed on the top, bottom, left, and right, and seemed to have enveloped the entire cave. The three of them exchanged glances with each other, and there was joy in their astonishment. After all, the more Xiaohua had, the safer they would be. They rejoiced in their hearts for choosing to go with Xiaohua. Seeing that all the talismans had been shot out, Xiaohua's hand quickly formed a dozen seals. Every talisman flashed with a faint light where his magic power was activated. "Rise," Xiaohua lightly scolded. He grabbed at the air with his hand, causing the spiritual energy fluctuations of more than 10 talismans to fluctuate. Qian Diheng felt the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings slightly rotate, but it immediately stopped. When he looked at Xiaohua again, he was already sitting cross-legged, motionless. "Huh? Already arranged the array?" Qian Diheng originally thought that there would be a big change, but when he saw that it was so calm, he was slightly disappointed. However, when he released his divine sense, he was shocked to find that his divine sense had been blocked inside the magic array and could no longer penetrate. "Senior brother Qian, this spell was originally incomplete. I was able to perform it with great effort. What else do you have in mind?" Xiaohua opened his eyes and said angrily, "Moreover, arranging the array will consume a lot of this little brother's spiritual energy. This little brother needs to rest first." TSK. Qian Diheng looked at Xiaohua with disdain, and then he also started to work hard. Just as Xiaohua finished setting up the array, mud rushed down from the top of the cave. It pushed away the plants and rocks, destroying the cave where Sun Shu and the others were resting. Xiaohua's array was also buried under the mud. After another 2 hours, a thunderbolt suddenly appeared tens of thousands of feet above the cave. Following the bright light of the thunderbolt, a palm-sized darkness appeared. This darkness seemed to be a mark of being torn apart by the thunderbolt. Suddenly, 2 dots of light appeared in the darkness. These 2 dots of light flickered like a pair of bright eyes. Following the appearance of these 2 dots of light, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in midair began to surge rapidly and converge towards these 2 dots of light. Furthermore, an overwhelming pressure was being emitted from these 2 dots of light. In the Imperial Thunder Sect, which was closest to this place, a few deity transformation stage cultivators with plain faces opened their eyes in astonishment. Their powerful spiritual wills exchanged slightly, and at the same time, a strand of their spiritual will was separated from their bodies. These strands of spiritual will were about to fly out of the Imperial Thunder Sect. 100 miles away from the cave, a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator was about to fly towards the cave. However, the pressure had already been emitted. This cultivator fell from the sky, and after stabilizing his body, he no longer dared to move forward. He looked for a direction and fled in panic. At this moment, the 2 bright spots suddenly disappeared again, and a thumb-sized bottle flew out from the darkness. The pitch-black crack rapidly shrank, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to its original state. The small bottle streaked across the sky, flew to the west, and soon disappeared without a trace. Following the disappearance of the crack, the pressure also disappeared. At this moment, the Divine Transformation Cultivator's divine clones still hadn't left the Imperial Thunder Sect. Several divine clones scanned the area again. As if they had discussed this beforehand, one divine clone flew out of the Imperial Thunder Sect's forbidden area and flew towards a spot where the dots of light appeared. The other divine clones all returned to the Divine Transformation Cultivator's bodies. When the divine clone reached the spot where the dots of light appeared, apart from the boundless rain and some lightning in the dark clouds, everything returned to normal. There were no longer any abnormalities. As for the divine clone, it was like the cultivator's physical body. It was surrounded by flowing light, blocking the rain outside. Could it be a foreign spiritual treasure has descended? The divine clone muttered to himself. The buzzing sound was like muffled thunder, causing the rain to tremble. Immediately after, an incomparably powerful divine sense was sent out from the spirit clone, sweeping across the surrounding dozens of miles. Strange. There's nothing here. Could it be they've left? The divine clone frowned and looked around. His gaze seemed to be able to see through the mud and saw where Xiao Hua and the others were. Why are 4 little qi refinement cultivators here? Then, the divine clone pointed with his finger and was about to call Xiao Hua and the others out. At this moment, the divine clone raised his eyebrows and his heart stirred. His left hand slowly formed a seal. The mysterious seal was actually a bit similar to the hand of karma in Xiao Hua's face. Before the divine clone could finish forming the seal, a brilliant light flashed around his body. The divine clone swayed and shot towards the southwest, which was similar to the direction the small bottle flew towards inside the cave. Inside the formation, Xiao Hua and the others were all paralyzed on the ground. Their eyes were filled with fear. That's right. When the 2 dots of light released their pressure, the 4 people closest to them couldn't avoid being alarmed by the pressure. That was such a terrifying pressure. A kind of ruthless, desolate, primitive, and majestic feeling was born from the bottom of their hearts. For a moment, they felt that they were incomparably small and weak. Not only was their spiritual power unable to circulate, even the true qi around them seemed to have solidified. They couldn't circulate at all. Although it was only a moment, to them it was like a few months or even a few years, until the pressure had long disappeared and the divine clone in the air had also been projected away. Xiao Hua murmured as if he was in a dream. Finally left? What kind of cultivation level is this senior? I feel that his cultivation level is unfathomable. Is there a senior undergoing tribulation here? Qian Diheng's gaze was also lifeless as he said blankly. No one answered him. After the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Kun Fian shook his head and said, "This is the territory of my Imperial Thunder Sect. No one will undergo tribulation here. Among the seniors of my Imperial Thunder Sect, I haven't heard of anyone undergoing tribulation here. My true qi has signs of foundation building." Sun Shu suddenly shouted in surprise. Chapter 1686. Hearing Qian Diheng's cry, Sun Shu and Kun Fei Yan also recovered from their fear and hurriedly checked their own cultivation. Sure enough, there were signs of true qi condensation. Unknowingly, the 3 of them revealed a joyful expression. "If you don't work hard now, when will you?" Xiao Hua shouted, immediately waking the 3 of them up from their dreams. They sat up from the ground, facing the sky, and began to circulate their respective cultivation techniques. True qi slowly flowed in their meridians. But a day and night passed very quickly. Xiao Hua's eager gaze gradually became dull. Although the 3 of them had a slight increase in their cultivation, none of them had taken the crucial step of foundation building. The next day, Kun Fei Yan was the first to open her eyes, full of unwillingness. Then Sun Shu also stopped, sighed, and stood up. After another incense stick's worth of time, Qian Diheng also stopped cultivating. Looking at the 2 senior sisters who had also not built their foundation, he said, "What a pity. I keep feeling like I'm about to build my foundation, but my true qi just can't condense." Yes, true qi is at the stage where it seems to be condensed but not condensed. If not for Master's reminder, I would have long tried to take the foundation building pill. Kun Fei Yan said with puffed up cheeks. The opportunity hasn't arrived. Sun Shu concluded, and the 3 of them sighed. Seeing this, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "What's wrong with 3 senior brothers? You haven't even left the Imperial Thunder Sect's territory and almost built your foundation. Isn't this a happy thing? If not for us staying behind by accident, how could we have encountered such a thing? If this isn't fate, then what is? Besides, although you haven't built your foundation, your cultivation is still a step closer. If you encounter another opportunity, won't it be easier for you to build your foundation? Isn't this much better than this little brother who failed to build his foundation? This little brother can't even congratulate you. What are you sighing about?" "Ha ha, junior brother Xiao is right. This brother was wrong. Qian Diheng was the most open-minded and immediately grinned. Sun Shu and Kuan Fian also came to their senses. The gloominess from being trapped and the regret from just now were all swept away. The three of them had just started their training, and they had already encountered a fortuitous encounter. This naturally indicated that this training was a success. All right, I'm afraid the rain has already passed. Let little brother take a look first, Xiahua said as he opened up the array and used his divine sense to look outside. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. Sun Shu and the other two also scanned the cave with their divine senses, and they too smiled bitterly. But the cave was already covered in mud, and many trees, weeds, and rocks were piled on top of the cave. The four of them were actually buried deep underground. Fortunately, the three of them had made sufficient preparations. They also had earth escape talismans. Each of them cast a spell and burrowed out of the ground. Xiahua also put away the talismans of the spell formation. As they flew into the air, the sun was right above their heads. The brilliant brilliance of the sun illuminated the mountains and rivers. Everything was full of vitality, and the danger from a few days ago was nowhere to be seen. Looking at the scenery below his feet and around him that was similar yet different from before, looking at the sun's eternal illumination, Xiahua understood something. The Tao of heaven and earth is precisely in this change that remains unchanged. No matter how much the world changes, the great Tao of heaven and earth will forever exist in the world. If cultivators of my generation can comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth, they can be considered as having achieved great success in cultivation. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart moved again. Cultivation realm, all kinds of spells. It seems they are all the changes of the Tao of heaven and earth, and comprehending the Tao of heaven is probably the foundation? Just as he thought of this, Qian Diheng shouted again from not far away. Junior brother Xiao, why are you still in a daze? Let's hurry up and continue our journey? Haha, Xiahua laughed. I will listen to senior brother and sister's instructions. After he finished speaking, he followed Sun Shu and the others and flew towards the north. Previously, the Tao of heaven outside Xiaohua's body was to pursue the improvement of his cultivation. On one hand, he comprehended the Tao of heaven and starry sky in the space. On the other hand, he could increase his cultivation speed at the speed of a turtle. However, he had never thought about why there was such a connection. Naturally, with Xiaohua's cultivation and realm, it was impossible for him to know the relationship between the two. Now, he had an opportunity to comprehend the Tao of heaven by chance. Although it was very superficial, it was still true knowledge. Therefore, in his later cultivation, he wholeheartedly refined the flames in his meridians and even more painstakingly comprehended the Tao of heaven, getting closer and closer to the so-called heaven-reaching realm. It was Sun Shu who led Xiahua and the others to continue flying towards the north. After flying for about 10 days, they turned around and headed west, then north again. They kept flying for more than a month. During this time, apart from the north and west, they actually went to the east and south several times. Xiahua said that he wouldn't ask where they were going and would only travel with them. But after flying for so long, there was still no danger. Even other cultivators rarely saw this. On this day, Xiahua couldn't help but fly to Sun Shu's side and ask with a smile, "Senior sister Sun, this little brother has something to say, but I don't know if it's appropriate to say it." During this month, Sun Shu and the others didn't just bury themselves in hurrying on with their journey. At night, after cultivating, they often discussed with each other and exchanged their cultivation experiences. Xiahua asked a lot of questions, but there were also a lot of questions that could be answered. Moreover, many of Xiaohua's questions were often things that they didn't know or had never encountered before. Therefore, in Sun Shu's eyes, Xiahua became more and more mysterious. The mark of a loose cultivator in his heart had long been discarded. At this time, when he saw Xiahua ask, he promptly cupped his hands and said, "Junior brother Xiao, if you have something to say, there's no harm in saying it." "It's nothing." Xiahua looked at the clouds in the distance and said with a smile, This little brother just thinks that although the place we are going to is hidden, that place isn't unknown to everyone. What's so strange about us going there to gain experience this time? Why do we have to go around in circles like this? We can just go there directly. As if he had already prepared for this, Sun Shu's face revealed a trace of a smile. Junior brother Xiao was a loose cultivator before entering my Imperial Thunder sect. I presume that you have experienced more than us in the Dawn Rain continent. I wonder what fellow Xiao would think if he saw a cultivator wanting to go to a place that he absolutely couldn't go with his cultivation? This one would definitely think that cultivator has a special purpose. Xiao Hua scratched his chin with his hand and said with a bitter smile, "But we are at the late stage of qi refining. Even if it's one of the 10 most dangerous places in the Dawn Rain continent, it's not necessarily impossible for us to go. Junior brother Xiao should know." Kun Fian at the side opened his mouth and said at this time, "If it's one of the 10 most dangerous places in the Dawn Rain continent, then Mo Zhao Black Forest, Ting Yen Yuan, and also the Profound Een Illusion Realm, they're all the closest to my Imperial Thunder sect. Although this dark mystery isn't the furthest, it's still very far. If we are purely going to gain experience, naturally, there's no need for us to go to the dark mystery. Since we are going to the dark mystery, then bystanders will definitely know that we have a special purpose. But for this, we have to deliberately create a maze." Xiao Hua helplessly shook his head. Junior brother Xiao still doesn't have the awareness of being a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Qian Diheng said with a laugh, "How can the journey of our Imperial Thunder sect's disciples be a simple journey? With the guidance of our master's journey, why would we blindly wander around the Dawn Rain continent?" Sun Shu thought for a while, bit his lip and said in a low voice, "Actually, there's another reason. But junior brother Xiao must be happy to hear this."
"Say it, say it."
Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he said with a wave of his sleeve, "This matter of the dark mystery is only known by a very small number of people in my Imperial Thunder sect. Not to mention Sun Thunder Palace and Zhen Thunder Palace. Even the masters in Qian Thunder Palace and Kun Thunder Palace who know about it can be counted with one's fingers. Therefore, we cannot let the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect know about our journey. In particular, we can't let the disciples of cultivator aristocratic families know." Sun Shu didn't mention loose cultivators, but since even the disciples of cultivator aristocratic families had to be concealed, those with loose cultivator backgrounds had to be concealed even more. If Xiao Hua hadn't saved Sun Shu, and his cultivation was higher than the three of them probably wouldn't have dragged Xiao Hua to the dark mystery no matter what. Alas, so be it. Xiao Hua had long known that there was no pure land in a cultivator's sect. Hearing this explanation, he also shook his head. This kind of estrangement seemed to be innate. Didn't they see that he also looked down on Jinchikue? This humble Taoist is being frank with Junior Martial Brother Xiao. I hope that Junior Martial Brother Xiao can dispel your doubts. We really want to build our foundation, and we also need Junior Martial Brother Xiao's help. We will not hide anything from you, nor will we have any thoughts that are not beneficial to Junior Martial Brother Xiao." Sun Shu's tone was extremely sincere. Alas, senior sister Sun still misunderstood. As soon as Xiao Hua heard this, he understood that Sun Shu was worried that he would blame her for not telling him in advance, so she explained so much. If it was someone else, they might really have some thoughts in their heart, but who was Xiao Hua? His heart was very open, and he had always been considerate of other people's thoughts. How could he blame his own senior sister from the same sect? Besides, after killing 2 early-stage foundation establishment cultivators, Xiao Hua's state of mind was even higher than Sun Shu and the others. Even if Sun Shu had some dirty thoughts in her heart, why would he care? Junior brother Xiao, cultivation is a path that goes against the heavens. Every cultivator has to seize the first opportunity. You can't blame us for being cautious. Qian Diheng flew to Xiao Hua's side and patted his shoulder, saying, "I believe that junior brother Xiao has already failed to build his foundation once. Of course, you will cherish the next chance to build your foundation even more and know the hardships, right? The things in the dark mystery are very likely to allow junior brother Xiao to find the opportunity to build his foundation again." You say, can this kind of opportunity be known to others for no reason? Haha, is there even a need to say this? Naturally, it can't be leaked at all. Junior brother is not a fool. Xiao Hua laughed. He himself had many secrets. How could he not know the importance of it? Very good, very good. Sun Shu and the others breathed a sigh of relief. The stone in their hearts had been in their hearts ever since they left Sky Thunder Peak. Now they could finally put it down. If Xiao Hua didn't ask for it for a day, they would be worried for a day. Now that Xiao Hua asked, the four of them could be considered to have no gaps in their hearts. I like junior brother Zhao's magnanimous heart the most. Qian Diheng pointed his hand and said, Today, I will agree with junior brother Xiao. Although the things in the dark mystery depend on opportunity, I will give this opportunity to junior brother Xiao first.
Ah.
Sun Shu and Kuan Fian were stunned, looking at Qian Diheng unexpectedly.
Don't.
Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said with a smile, Junior brother Qian understands senior brother Qian's thoughts. Since it depends on opportunity, then it depends on opportunity. If senior brother Qian can get it first, then it is senior brother Qian's. Junior brother. What? Junior brother Xiao wants to let me lose face? Qian Diheng pretended to be angry. Chapter 1687. Seeing Xiao Hua and Qian Diheng giving way to each other, Kuan Fian also felt a little warm in his heart. He advised, since it's an opportunity, where else can it be? Let's wait until we get there. Haha, you're right. Qian Diheng slapped his head and said, if we could get it earlier, I'm afraid we wouldn't have a share. Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed heartily again. His figure accelerated and flew towards the west. He said, since we are looking for fate, this little brother's luck has always been good. Let me take senior sister and senior brother on a trip to the west. Wait. Seeing this, Sun Shu called out wait 3 times. But Xiao Hua was already far away, leaving the three behind and shaking their heads with a bitter smile. When Sun Shu and the other two caught up with Xiao Hua, they said, Junior brother Xiao, you're going in the wrong direction. What's wrong? Don't you want to hide your tracks? Where are we going? Xiao Hua scratched his head. Junior brother Xiao, 2,000 miles to the north is Weeping Moon City. It's the place we want to go. Sun Shu laughed. Strange. Didn't you just say you want to hide your tracks? Won't we be exposed when we get to Weeping Moon City? Xiao Hua knew there must be a reason. It's a diversion. Junior brother Xiao, how could you forget? Qian Diheng shook his finger in the air and said, besides, we still have a lot of things in our storage bags. If we don't go to Weeping Moon City to exchange, wouldn't it be a waste of our trip? I understand. Xiao Hua nodded. Then, Xiao Hua followed the three to the north. After flying for a while, Qian Diheng looked at Kuan Fian and Sun Shu, who were leading the way, and whispered to Xiao Hua, Junior brother Xiao, have you been to Weeping Moon City? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, wondering why Qian Diheng whispered to him. He also whispered back, my cultivation was low before, so I've only been to Jinghua City and Yenyuan City. Oh, Qianyu City was also considered a passerby, but I've never been to Weeping Moon City. Well, since junior brother Xiao has never been to Weeping Moon City, then naturally you don't know the benefits of Weeping Moon City. Oh? Senior brother Qian, please give me some pointers. Qian Diheng nodded. Senior sister Sun was the one who decided on the route we took along this journey, but Weeping Moon City was my suggestion. It's only because I know the location of an artifact refinement facility in Jinghua City. This place doesn't care about the origin of your magic tool. As long as you can afford the spirit stones, you can change the appearance of your magic tool or even upgrade its grade. There's such a place? Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He had read the ancient records for 5 years and knew of the 10 great cities and the 10 great danger zones. However, he had never seen these relatively secretive places. I see that the martial uncle of Swallow Thunder Ridge is making things difficult for you. I'm afraid he's not making things up. Presumably, your Myriad Thunder Valley has some matters that you can't handle in Swallow Thunder Ridge, so I have some matters to attend to in this place. If you need anything, you can come with me, Qian Diheng said with a faint smile. That place is very mysterious. It is said that even magic treasures can be refined again. If you want to change the appearance of your magic treasure cloud suppressing seal, it is naturally possible. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have enough spirit stones. At this point, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. I'm afraid the spirit stones needed to refine magic treasures are a lot. Little brother, even if I take all of your spirit stones, it won't be enough, right? Of course you don't have spirit stones. You can also use other magic tools to exchange for them. Qian Diheng explained. In addition, some medicinal pills are also fine. Didn't junior brother Xiao get some medicinal pills at the Feather Immortal Assembly? If you take them all out, it should be enough. Then forget it. Xiao Hua shook his head. I'm still waiting to use those medicinal pills after I build my foundation. Kun Fian seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look at the two. Qian Diheng immediately shut up and smiled at Kun Fian. Kun Fian didn't see anything and continued to fly forward. Qian Diheng winked at Xiao Hua and didn't say anything else. They didn't say anything along the way. After flying for a few days, Xiao Hua saw that in the distance, there were hundreds of huge rocks arranged in a strange way on the ground. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. Weeping Moon City is actually like this. Sure enough, Qian Diheng pointed with his finger and said, Junior brother Xiao, that place in the distance is Weeping Moon City. This Weeping Moon City is different from other cities. It is made of huge rocks. Look, those hundreds of huge rocks are the city walls of Weeping Moon City and also the Great Defensive Formation of Weeping Moon City. It is said that the Great Defensive Formation of Weeping Moon City is divided into 2 layers. The inner layer is the huge rocks called the 100-change huge rock formation. When it is not activated, these hundreds of huge rocks protect the entire Weeping Moon City. It is purely for defense. But once it is activated, those hundreds of huge rocks will leave their original positions and float in the air. They can both attack and defend. The most powerful one is the second layer formation called the 10,000 Stacking Waves Formation. It is said that when it is activated, the tens of thousands of rocks within dozens of miles of Weeping Moon City will be controlled by the formation. From top to bottom, from front to back, it will protect Weeping Moon City. It is like a rolling ball of huge rocks. Unless there is a powerful person or a cultivation sect attacking, it will be impossible to break through. Oh my, it is so powerful. Xiao Hua stuck out his tongue. The power of Weeping Moon City was recorded in the ancient books of Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua didn't say anything and only expressed his amazement. Yes, the ancestor of Weeping Moon City is a master of formations. It is because of the abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth in Weeping Moon City that he built this city from the rocks. This kind of powerful person is really worthy of my respect. As Sun Shu and the others spoke, the 4 of them had already flown to the front of Weeping Moon City. I am afraid that flying is going to be forbidden, Xiao Hua thought to himself when he saw that they were still a few miles away from Weeping Moon City. Sure enough, as Xiao Hua's body tightened, a great force pulled Xiao Hua to the ground. Sun Shu said in a low voice, Junior brother Xiao, let us land. In front of us is the forbidden area of Weeping Moon City. And Xiao Hua nodded. Everyone landed. Weeping Moon City didn't seem to be as lively as Jingbo City. As far as the eye could see, there were only 2 or 3 cultivators landing from all directions and entering Weeping Moon City. Moreover, unlike Jingbo City, Weeping Moon City didn't have any city gates. There were gaps between the huge rocks in front of them. Xiao Hua and the other cultivators in front of them were free to enter from different places without any obstruction. Even the situation inside the huge rocks wasn't blocked. Everything could be seen at a glance. The city lord of Weeping Moon City is said to be a nascent soul female cultivator named Fairy Weeping Moon. She is a master of formations. The way she opens the door to welcome guests is really impressive. I wonder when I will have the opportunity to pay her a visit. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes as he looked at the huge rock formation of Weeping Moon City. He couldn't help but think of his rabbit talisman and the formations he had comprehended. Chapter 1688. Of course, Xiao Hua was the only one who knew what he was thinking. He knew that he was dreaming. Fairy Chiwe was a nascent soul stage senior and the lord of a city. How could she possibly communicate with the mere chi refining stage cultivator? It would be impossible for them to even meet once. Immediately, Xiao Hua followed Sun Shu and the other two and picked a place to enter Chiwe City. However, when Xiao Hua reached the gap between the boulders, there seemed to be no obstruction at all. Even his divine sense couldn't detect any obstruction. However, a very subtle thing swept past Xiao Hua's body. This feeling was also the result of Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense. Only his Buddhist sense could detect a trace of it. Moreover, Xiao Hua's eyes turned a few times, and he hid this strange feeling in the bottom of his heart. When he walked through the gap between the boulders and entered Chiwe City, Xiao Hua was still dumbfounded. It turned out that what the naked eye saw was far from the truth. The bustling and prosperous scene inside Chiwe City was completely different from what Xiao Hua had seen outside the city. The figures and traces of the cultivators who had entered the city earlier were all illusions created by the formation. The real figures had long since disappeared. AI. It really is a great formation protecting the city. It's far from what I can guess with my current cultivation. Xiao Hua secretly smiled and shook his head. Chiwe City was different from Jingbo City and Yenyuan City. All kinds of buildings were piled up with huge boulders and had a rough style. Even the streets inside the city were more than twice as wide as the other two cities. The shops on both sides of the street were equally wide. However, what was similar was the signboards of the shops and the smiling low-level cultivators standing in front of the shops. Two spirit beasts that were several times larger than camels were carrying an incomparably large flower carriage. The flower carriage was suspended in the air and was pulled by the spirit beasts. They quickly flew past Xiao Hua and the others and quickly rushed to the end of the street. Xiao Hua knew that these spirit beasts were the specialty of Chiwe City, spirit camels. They were powerful, fast, and most importantly, gentle. They were used to pull carriages and were quite similar to the flying feather beasts of Yenyuan City. While he was thinking, an empty car slowly came from afar. Qian Diheng took a step forward, stretched out his hand, and called, "Buddy." There was a fourth-layer chi refining cultivator sitting on top of the spirit camel pulling the carriage. When he saw someone blocking the carriage, he patted the protruding hump on the back of the spirit camel. The spirit camel raised its head and neighed before galloping towards Qian Diheng. "Let's go, junior brother Xiao. It's forbidden to fly in Chiwe City. It's a bit far for us to walk to the inn. Let's take the spirit camel carriage. After we get on the carriage, I'll tell you more." Qian Diheng turned around and explained to Xiao Hua with a smile. However, before he could finish his words, a cultivator walked out of a shop about 3 meters to the left of Qian Diheng. When that cultivator saw the spirit camel carriage in front of him, he stepped on it without even looking at it. "Fellow Taoist." This carriage was called by the fellow Taoist in front. "Please get off and wait for the next carriage." The cultivator driving the carriage didn't dare to drive the spirit camel. He looked at Qian Diheng and turned around to say to the cultivator who got on the carriage. Just as the cultivator spoke, another 6 or 7 cultivators walked out of the shop. They were all 10th-layer chi refining cultivators. When these cultivators saw the cultivator in front of them get on the carriage, they all laughed and wanted to go up. Qian Diheng had already noticed this. His expression was very ugly. He coldly walked to the front of the spirit camel carriage and scolded, "This is the spirit camel carriage I called. How can you be the first to get on it? Hurry up and get off." This group of cultivators was stunned. The cultivators who didn't get on the carriage didn't matter. However, if the cultivators who got on the carriage got off, they would lose face. However, when they saw Qian Diheng's late 12th layer chi refining cultivation and the 3 people behind him, they couldn't help but hesitate. "What? You still don't want to get off?" Qian Diheng's sneer became even wider. "Humph, I got on the carriage first. I didn't see anyone calling for a carriage. Although your cultivation is high, you can't be unreasonable." When the cultivator who got on the carriage saw that there were people watching, he unconsciously became emboldened and stood up to shout. Then, He said to the cultivator driving the spirit camel, "I often walk around Chiua City. I have sat in this fellow Taoist spirit camel carriage before. Tell me, who got on your carriage first?" Just as the owner of the spirit camel was hesitating, another cultivator walked out of the shop with joy on his face. This cultivator was holding something in his hand. When he saw the many cultivators in front of the spirit camel, he frowned. He looked around and saw Xiao Hua and the others. However, at that moment, his eyes were filled with shock. Then a hint of ecstasy appeared on his face. He turned around and returned to the shop once more. However, Xiao Hua and the others were looking at Qiandiheng and the cultivators on the spirit camel carriage with great interest. They didn't see the cultivator, who came out of the shop at all. This fellow Taoist came first. Obviously, the owner of the spirit camel was intimidated by the cultivator. He cupped his hands and said to Qiandiheng with panic on his face, "Senior, I was dazzled and thought you were going to get on the carriage. Since you didn't, please look at the other carriages." With that, an empty spirit camel carriage came slowly from not far away. The cultivator driving the carriage was overjoyed. He quickly stood up from the spirit camel carriage and waved his arms while shouting. Unfortunately, what kind of temper did Qiandiheng have? As a disciple with a powerful background in the Heavenly Thunder Palace, how could he give in so easily?
What?
A disciple of my Thunder Control sect was bullied by a 10th-level Qi refining cultivator in Chiua City? Damn it, I'd like to see which famous sect dares to rob a disciple of my Thunder Control sect. Qiandiheng reached out his hand and grabbed the spirit camel carriage's nose and said angrily, without looking at the empty carriage, Thunder Control sect? The cultivator driving the carriage turned pale. He quickly turned his head and bowed, saying, "Senior brother, can you go to the carriage in front?"
Boy.
Thunder Control sect. A trace of fear appeared on the faces of those cultivators. They unconsciously looked at each other in dismay. "Ha, you're really a coward. How come you retreat when you see a famous sect? You've become unreasonable even though you were reasonable." "That's right. If it's I'll definitely not get off the carriage. Magic is forbidden in Chiua City. So, what if you're a disciple of the Thunder Control sect? You have to be reasonable." It seemed that many cultivators had a lot of opinions about the famous sections. At this time, seeing the situation, they also added fuel to the fire. "Humph, fellow brothers, others care about the Thunder Control sect.
Why should we care about them?
Come on, I'd like to see what the city guards of Chiua City do." The cultivator who had already got on the carriage sneered and called out. The cultivator driving the carriage turned even paler. He had to turn his head and begged Qiandiheng again, "Senior brother of the Thunder Control sect, no. Martial uncle, please turn around. That spirit camel carriage is fast and stable. Haha, a bunch of cowards." Qiandiheng was angry. He used his strength to pull his hand. The spirit camel was pulled by him. It seemed to be in great pain. It tried its best to support itself and raised its hoof to lift Qiandiheng. The spirit camel fruit was indeed a spirit beast with great strength. Qiandiheng's hand shook and the spirit camel fruit broke free. Damn it! Qiandiheng was angry. His face was slightly red. He slapped his hand and was about to take out a magic tool from his storage bag. Sun Shu was shocked. He quickly stepped forward and held Qiandiheng's arm. He transmitted his voice, "Junior brother Qian, don't be angry. Ha ha ha." The other cultivators saw this and knew that Qiandiheng would not do anything. They laughed and began to board the carriage. The last cultivator glanced around and looked at the shop behind him with a strange expression. Hee, is that so? I heard that Chiua City does not allow the use of magic power to fight? Xiao Hua smiled and stepped forward. He quickly grabbed the spirit camel fruit's hoof. The spirit camel fruit was obviously scared. It quickly pulled back. But in Xiao Hua's hand, how could it struggle? Soon after, Xiao Hua effortlessly grabbed the spirit camel's hoof and exerted a bit of force. The spirit camel screamed and lost its balance and fell to the ground. The owner of the spirit camel immediately jumped off the spirit camel's back. The carriage on the spirit camel's back was also tilted. Other than the first cultivator, who forced himself to remain standing, the others also jumped off the spirit camel. The spirit camel fruit first lay down and then struggled to get up. Xiaohua stepped forward and pressed one hand on the spirit camel fruit's back. He sneered, "I want to see if this spirit camel fruit can it still carry people?" Hiss. Seeing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The spirit camel was a common thing in Weeping Moon City, and everyone knew how strong it was. Xiaohua was able to subdue it with a single hand, so how strong was he? Of course, strength was secondary to cultivators. However, when magic power was not allowed to fight, strength was obviously superior. Io, where is senior brother Chong? Why hasn't he come out yet? The last cultivator looked around and shouted, "Senior brother Chong?" The others were also shocked. They exchanged glances and shouted to the cultivator who was still on the spirit camel fruit, "Senior brother Tsong, senior brother Chong is still in the store. Is something wrong? Let's go in and take a look." Fine. Senior martial brother Tsong glared hatefully at Xiaohua and the others and said, "Weeping Moon City is a place of reason. If it weren't for my senior martial brother, this poor Taoist would never let this matter rest." After that, he jumped down from the spirit camel fruit and followed the others into the store. "I want to see who is the one who won't let this matter rest." Qian Diheng clapped his hands and was about to follow the others in. "Forget it." Sun Shu quickly stopped Qian Diheng. "Don't lower yourself to the same level as these lowly cultivators. It will tarnish the reputation of our Imperial Thunder sect." Qian Diheng stomped his feet and was about to get on the spirit camel fruit. "Why are you getting on this?" Xiaohua loosened his grip and let go of the spirit camel fruit. He pointed and said with a smile, "Why don't you take the spirit camel fruit over there?" "Haha, that's right." Qian Diheng glanced at the cultivator who was standing next to the spirit camel fruit with a pitiful look. He laughed and got on the other spirit camel fruit. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Kun Fian concluded and got on the other spirit camel fruit as well. Chapter 1689. The spirit camel carriage was very fast, and the Weeping Moon City was very big. Obviously, Qian Diheng already had a plan. After getting on the spirit camel carriage, he told the cultivator driving the carriage the name of an inn. Sun Shu blinked and didn't refute. The spirit camel carriage walked for an hour before arriving in front of a luxurious-looking inn. Qian Diheng took out spirit stones to pay the bill. Xiaohua glanced at it and couldn't help but feel a little heartache. He didn't expect that riding the spirit camel carriage would actually cost so many spirit stones, but thinking about the half-hour journey, it would really be a headache. This heartache and this headache, it seemed that he had to choose the same. As for the accommodation, Qian Diheng was also generous. He asked for 4 rooms, 1 for each person. After waiting for the waiter to eagerly send the 4 people to their rooms, Xiaohua took the magic tablet, looked at it casually, and threw it on the table in the room. He then sat cross-legged on the cloud bed, quietly waiting for Qian Diheng to come. Unexpectedly, after a long time, he still didn't see Qian Diheng's figure. Xiaohua couldn't help but feel surprised. Could it be that senior martial brother Qian's personality has changed? At this time, footsteps came from outside the room, and Sun Shu's voice came, "Junior martial brother Xiao, can I go in?" Xiaohua jumped up from the cloud bed and said with a smile, "Senior martial sister Sun, please come in. The restriction of I's room is not open." Sun Shu entered the room, looked around and said apologetically, "I originally wanted to book another inn in the Weeping Moon City, but I didn't expect junior martial brother Qian to insist on coming here. The conditions here are a little bad. I hope junior martial brother Xiao doesn't mind." Xiaohua knew that Sun Shu came with a purpose, so he said with a smile, "I'm just a loose cultivator, and I'm already very satisfied with these conditions. Senior martial sister Sun, what brings you here?" Sun Shu nodded, looked around, and said with a sound transmission, "Although we came to the Weeping Moon City to deceive people, we still have to go to the Weeping Moon City's price negotiation. What I didn't tell you in detail before is that the Weeping Moon City's bargaining conference is quite unique. Many mystic instruments and even mystic treasures of unknown origin are brought here to be exchanged. Junior brother Qian must have chosen this place for the purpose of the bargaining conference. I have already made some inquiries, and it just so happens that there will be a price negotiation meeting in 3 days. If junior brother Xiao is interested, shall we go together? Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face lit up with joy. He clapped his hands and said, "Good. This little brother hasn't come out to travel for a long time. I'm just looking for some good things to bring back." Then it's settled. Junior brother Xiao can cultivate here for the next few days, or you can go out and enjoy the scenery. In 3 days, I will come and get junior brother. Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Senior apprentice sister Sun arranged it very well. Little brother has no objections. Little brother is meditating in the room. When the time comes, I will wait for senior sister's call."
Hee hee.
Sun Shu covered his mouth and laughed. Junior brother Xiao is quite peaceful. I don't have to worry about him. There seemed to be a hidden meaning behind these words, and Xiao Hua's face turned red. However, after Sun Shu took a few steps, he turned back and said, "Oh right, there is a special spirit herb in Sobbing Moon City that is used by Foundation establishment cultivators. Junior brother Xiao, if you have the time to go out and try your luck, you might be able to find something." Senior Sun is talking about the Yi Lian green fruit, right? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Junior brother Xiao is quite knowledgeable. The climate near Sobbing Moon City is dry, and the Earth's spiritual energy is dense. It's a good opportunity for the Yi Lian green fruit to grow. Many cultivators come to Sobbing Moon City for this special spirit fruit. Sun Shu said with a strange expression. After all, when Xiao Hua first went to the Feather Immortal Assembly with her, he didn't seem to know a lot of things. She was just reminding him out of kindness. She didn't expect Xiao Hua to read a lot of ancient books in these 5 years. Although he didn't travel, he still understood a lot. Xiao Hua scratched his head and didn't explain. He shook his head slightly. This Yi Lian green fruit is good, but it's used to improve the structure of true essence. It's used for early-stage foundation establishment cultivators to break through. It doesn't seem to have any effect on aura refining cultivators like us, right? Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua's heart was slightly moved. His cultivation was constantly improving, different from other 12th layer aura refining cultivators whose cultivation was stagnant. Would this Yi Lian green fruit be useful to him? Hee. I just feel that although junior brother Xiao failed to build his foundation, with junior brother Zhao's aptitude, you can definitely build your foundation in the future. Didn't the ancients say? When the heavens are about to bestow a great responsibility on a great man, they must first torment his will, tire his muscles and bones, starve his body, empty his body, and disturb his actions, right? Junior brother Xiao only needs to be patient, and you can achieve what you can't. Foundation, establishment, gold core. You can just raise your hand. Sun Shu stared at Xiao Hua with her beautiful eyes and said very sincerely. When Xiao Hua heard this, he also raised his head and looked at Sun Shu's gaze. He saw that her pure gaze was full of trust and didn't have the slightest trace of contempt. Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Thank you, senior sister Sun. Junior brother definitely won't disappoint senior sister. And, junior brother Xiao, go ahead and cultivate. I'm leaving." Sun Shu's face inexplicably reddened. Her words were admittedly filled with trust in Xiao Hua, but they also contained encouragement. Seeing Xiao Hua's unparalleled self-confidence, who knew how many times stronger than the decadence of many cultivators who failed to build their foundation, her heart couldn't help but become slightly chaotic. After Sun Shu left, Xiao Hua sat on the cloud bed for a while, but he still didn't see Qian Diheng coming over. He couldn't help but feel anxious. In his storage pouch, he still had the 4-phase wheel, 100-layer cloud seal, MO cloud armor, and a spear-shaped magic tool. That magic tool and 4-phase wheel weren't as offensive as the cloud-suppressing seal, but the 100-layer cloud seal and MO cloud armor were defensive magic tools. In the cultivation world, defensive magic tools were much rarer than offensive magic tools. It was rare that Swallow Thunder Ridge, which was an inheritance of refining, could suddenly take out 2 defensive magic tools to deal with Xiao Hua's cloud-suppressing seal. Xiao Hua didn't know that he could reforge magic tools in Weeping Moon City, but since he knew, how could he not have thoughts about it? After all, although Xiao Hua's current physical body was tough, it couldn't be compared to magic tools. Without a protective magic tool, wouldn't it be the same as not wearing a Taoist robe? However, when Xiao Hua arrived at Qian Diheng's room, Qian Diheng removed the restriction. After hearing Xiao Hua's request, Qian Diheng unconsciously smiled mysteriously and said, "Junior brother Xiao, don't be anxious about this matter. We can't go anywhere at the same time. Anyway, there are still 3 days before the price negotiation. Let me explore the path first and figure out the twists and turns, then I'll tell junior brother Xiao. What do you think?" And junior brother understands. Xiao Hua nodded emotionally. He was also worried about how to take out magic tools in front of Qian Diheng. This arrangement was exactly what he wanted. Soon after, Xiao Hua returned to his room. Looking at the furnishings in the room, he knew that this place wasn't suitable for him to cultivate. Frowning, he took out the jade slip for refining tools and carefully studied it. After a long time, Xiao Hua didn't carefully calculate the time. He didn't know which part of the refining tool he saw, but Xiao Hua's heart was moved. He floated up from the cloud bed, took out a magic tablet, opened the restriction in the room, and walked out of the inn. "Sir, where are you going?" Seeing Xiao Hua come out of the high-priced room, the waiter waiting outside quickly came to greet him. Looking at the waiter's flattering face, Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. This waiter's cultivation base was at the 2nd layer of the Qi refining realm. Several years ago, when he was in the Shang Huaming and Heaven Forsaken, he had always been pursuing the realm. But now, this 2nd layer of the Qi refining realm wasn't even worthy of carrying his shoes. He could only be servile in front of him. The realm and cultivation that cultivators pursue are not without reason. Master's encouragement and supervision are also not wrong. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua recalled Wu Hen's encounter on Sky Thunder Peak. If it wasn't for him being worried, how could Wu Hen run from Myriad Thunder Valley to Sky Thunder Peak? Unfortunately, I'm a good-for-nothing disciple. I'll have to disappoint Master for a few years. Xiao Hua's gaze was somewhat erratic. "Sir," seeing that Xiao Hua didn't answer, the waiter didn't dare to say anything else. He called out in a low voice and retreated to the side. Xiao Hua glanced at him and felt a trace of pity in his heart. It was as if he was looking at himself from several years ago. He patted his hand and took out a mid-grade spirit stone from his storage pouch. He handed it over and said with a smile, "Waiter, I want to see a tool refining shop. Are there any good shops you recommend?" "There's no need for a spirit stone." The waiter didn't expect Xiao Hua to give him a spirit stone. He quickly declined and said with an apologetic smile, "There's a shop in the east of the city called Wanji. It's a famous old shop in Chiyu City. The shop's owner has 1,000 years of inheritance and is the most authentic. If Sir Daoist goes there, you can mention my name and it'll be 10% cheaper." "Waiter, you sure know how to fool people. Who doesn't know that there's a shop in Chiyu City? That shop is also close to here. You want this fellow Daoist to go to Wanji's shop. I'm afraid you have some selfish motives." A cultivator with a ruddy complexion just happened to walk out of the room. When he heard the waiter's words, he sneered. "I'll let this Daoist know." The waiter's face immediately turned red and he quickly said, "I do know the owner of Wanji's shop, but his things are really good. Although Chiyu sect is close, their things are more than 30% more expensive than Wanji's. Everyone wants to go because of Chiyu sect's signboard, but no buts." The 10th layer Qi refining cultivator flicked his sleeve and said, "I don't need to worry about their goods because of Chiyu sect's signboard. Who knows what kind of background this Luan Ji has?" Then, he cupped his hands towards Xiao Hua and said, "Senior martial brother, I know the way to Chiyu sect. May I have the honor of showing you the way?" Xiao Hua looked at the blushing waiter and then at the eager cultivator. He smiled and said to the waiter, "Brother waiter, you haven't told me your name yet, have you? How can I be taken care of if I go there?" "Brother waiter?" When the waiter heard this, his expression became even more excited and he stuttered, I'm surnamed Fan, named Yi. I've been with Wan Jiaming since I was young. Wan Jiaming? When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but frown. Needless to say, this was definitely the owner of Wan Ji's shop. How high could his cultivation be if he grew up with Fan Yi? Haha, a second-layer qi refining shopkeeper. What magic tools could he possibly refine? Fellow Taoist, you should go to Qiyue's sect. The cultivator laughed loudly. Wan Jiaming is a waiter of Wan Ji's shop. Fan Yi knew he said something wrong and hurriedly explained, the shopkeeper of Wan Ji's shop is an elder from his clan, Wan Han. Hee, thank you, brother waiter. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the spirit stone floated in front of Fan Yi. Then he left the shop without looking back. Fan Yi held the spirit stone in his hand, and his eyes were filled with gratitude. At this moment, a faintly discernible speck of light quietly appeared in Xiaohua's Buddha's heart. It appeared so ordinary that Xiaohua didn't notice it at all. Chapter 1690. Wan Ji's store was indeed famous. Xiaohua stopped his spirit camel carriage, and the driver immediately recognized the name. Xiaohua didn't even need to say a fifth word. Of course, after the spirit camel carriage traveled for a full hour, Xiaohua sat at the back of the carriage and looked at the scenery of sobbing Moon City to his heart's content. Only then did they arrive at a relatively quiet place. Although it was called quiet, it was actually a remote place with few people. It was far less lively than the inn. At the end of a street that wasn't very wide, there was a shabby shop that wasn't too big standing there alone. There was a big hammerhead sign hanging on it, similar to a workshop in the secular world. Xiaohua looked around and shook his head. This kind of remote place, if it wasn't for Fan Ye's guidance, who would spend spirit stones to ride a spirit camel carriage here. Even if the 7 skills sect's magic tools are a bit more expensive, I'm afraid I can still take advantage of this little bit of spirit stones. However, the 7 skills sect had chased after Xiaohua to kill him. Xiaohua had always disliked the 7 skills sect, so how could he take care of their business? I won't even give half a spirit stone to the 7 skills sect. Xiaohua curled his lips and walked toward Wan Ji's store. At the same time, Xiaohua's appearance also changed slightly. When he arrived in front of Wan Ji's store, he had already used the stealing the sky technique to change into another person.
Wan Ji's store was quite big.
All kinds of coarse materials were placed in different places. In the middle of the store was a very strange 5-star shaped counter. In the middle of the counter, a short and fat cultivator was actually sitting there and taking a nap. Yes, he was taking a nap. When Xiaohua saw this, he almost rubbed his eyes. Which cultivator didn't cultivate diligently in order to break through before the end of their lifespan? Even if they didn't make any progress, they still racked their brains to find a chance. He had never seen anyone napping during the day. Cough, cough, Xiaohua stepped into the store and coughed twice. He released his divine sense and carefully observed the materials. Huff, huff, Xiaohua's coughing not only didn't wake the fat man up, but also caused him to snore. Damn it! If I were to do that, wouldn't Master have flown into a rage? Xiaohua smiled bitterly and was too lazy to pay attention to him. He simply walked around the shop. Whenever he saw something he liked, he would reach out his hand and take the material in his hand, carefully observing it. Xiaohua had read through most of the jade slips regarding the refining of tools in Swallow Thunder Ridge. He had never truly practiced the Tao of refining, so it was hard to say how good he was. But in terms of identifying materials, Xiaohua was full of confidence. After he finished looking through the items in the store, he couldn't help but nod to himself. Fan Yu was right. The items in this store were indeed not bad. Not only was there a variety of items, but the quality was also excellent. Alas, cultivators are actually the same as mortals. They all care about fame. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat and he thought, moreover, the fragrance of wine is afraid of being hidden deep in the alleys. This Wan Ji store has some background, but its reputation can't compare to 7 skill sects. Moreover, it's located in such a remote place. How can it be popular? Soon after, Xiaohua raised his head again. He saw that there were more than 10 partitions on the pentagonal counter. Each partition had some grids. The grids were of different sizes, and there were some small objects that looked like Dharma treasures but weren't Dharma treasures. When Xiaohua's gaze fell on a small object that looked like a peacock, his heart trembled, and he couldn't help but walk over. That grid didn't have any fluctuations of spiritual energy, so it probably didn't have any restrictions. Xiaohua didn't even think about it and grabbed at the air. The peacock flew out of the grid, however. As soon as the peacock jumped out of the grid, a spark flew out from each of the 5 corners of the 5-star-shaped platform. These 5 sparks were also special. They were actually separated into 5 different colors and flew towards Xiaohua. Xiaohua was startled. Although the sparks were small, they were extremely powerful. With a sweep of his divine sense, he saw that the 5 sparks were rapidly absorbing the 5 elements' spiritual energy. They grew larger and larger. By the time they reached Xiaohua, they had already condensed into the size of a wicker basket. 5 different colors rapidly revolved within it, aiming straight for Xiaohua's chest. Xiaohua smiled. He stretched out his left hand and used an ice seal to seal the fireball. However, the instant the seal sealed the fireball fiercely expanded and absorbed the ice seal's magic power. Soon after, with a pung sound, it exploded. Xiaohua's expression changed when he saw this. His right hand didn't dare to be negligent. He grabbed at the air again and sealed the exploding fireball. Soon after, an explosive force came from his right hand. Xiaohua's hand shook twice before it gradually disappeared. Damn it! What kind of fireball is this? It's so powerful? Even a 12th-layer qi refining cultivator might not be able to completely control it. Xiaohua muttered in his heart. Where did this little thief come from? Only now did the sweaty fatty wake up. He didn't have time to wipe away the sparkling saliva at the corner of his mouth. When he saw Xiaohua's young appearance, he immediately shouted. At the same time, he slapped his storage pouch and took out several yellow talismans. He looked around in a somewhat flustered manner. Xiaohua looked thoughtfully at the chaotic spiritual energy in his right hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't panic. I was just looking around." Looking around? You can touch other people's things just by looking around? The fatty said casually. He seemed to still be a bit sleepy. Jamming. How can you be so impudent? A rebuke came from behind the shop. An 11th-layer qi refining middle-aged cultivator quickly walked out. The fatty woke up at this moment and looked at Xiaohua. It would have been better if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. He quickly threw the yellow talisman into his storage pouch and bowed. Junior Luan Jiaming greets Senior. That respectful look on his face showed that his attitude was very proper. You're the Luan Jiaming that Fanny spoke of? Xiaohua said with a smile. It must be hard on you to be able to sleep in the middle of the day. Luan Jiaming's face was flushed red. He mumbled something but didn't know what to say. Fellow Taoist was recommended by Fan Yi. The cultivator, who came later, stepped forward and saluted. I, Luan Han, greet fellow Taoist. Fan Yi is quite considerate. Fellow Taoist, take a look. All materials, magic tools, and so on, I will give fellow Taoist a discount. Xiaohua smiled and nodded. He pointed at the pentagonal counter and asked, Let's not talk about other things first. I want to know what's going on with that fireball that contained the qi of the 5 elements. Oh, as expected, fellow Taoist has a good divine ability. Hearing Xiaohua's question, Luan Han's face also showed a trace of respect. This is my Luan Ji's ancestral frigid flame. If you're not at the foundation establishment stage, you absolutely can't easily extinguish it. Frigid flame? Xiaohua slightly furrowed his brows. He carefully recalled but didn't seem to have any impression. What a pity. By Ai's generation, most of the frigid flame had already been lost. It can only be used to refine tools. But according to ancient legends, this flame is the flame seed of the celestial world's heavenly fire. At its peak, it has the ability to destroy heaven and earth. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't know, Luan Han proudly explained. Chapter 1691. Heavenly Flame Seed. When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. The heavenly flame of the immortal world was something from legends. He already felt that it was amazing that he could control the true Samadhi fire, but this Luan family actually had a heavenly flame seed? This was truly hilarious. However, this fireball's power is really great. Although it might not be a heavenly flame seed, it's still very powerful. If I want to refine tools in the future, I'm afraid I'll need this kind of flame. Xiao Hua muttered to himself. However, after thinking about it carefully, the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth revealed a faintly discernible smile. Fellow Taoist, are you interested in this doll? Wan Han waved his hand, and a strange spell was cast on the counter. The small peacock flew up and stopped in front of Wan Han. Wan Han stretched out his index finger and tapped the peacock's back. The peacock raised its head and let out a clear cry before spreading its wings and flying in the air. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the peacock retracted its wings and flew back into Wan Han's hand. Fellow Taoist, what do you think of this peacock? Wan Han said with a smile. This is something young female cultivators like the most. If fellow Taoist has a dual cultivation partner, or children, you can buy it for them. It's the best gift. Seeing Xiao Hua frown, Wan Han rolled his eyes and said with a smile, this doll refining technique is unique to my Luanji shop. 7 skills sect can't do it. If fellow Taoist is interested and you were introduced by Fan Yi, I will give you a discount of 30% of the spirit stones. Xiao Hua glanced at Wan Han, but his gaze didn't fall on the peacock in his hand. He shook his head and said, Fanny told I that this Luanji shop is an old shop in Weeping Moon City. It's the real deal. If it wasn't for bad luck, it would definitely be more famous than 7 Skills Sex Shop. But now, Sai, why did it only end up in the predicament of selling dolls? Wan Han's expression changed slightly, and his eyes narrowed. Then he smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. Haven't you heard of the saying in the secular world? A poor man's ambition. Although my Luanji shop can refine powerful magic tools, what's the use if no one visits? Dolls? Although it's just for fun, it can earn spirit stones for my Luanji shop. If I don't sell this, do you think I'm going to sell beads? Besides, even though my Luanji store has a good foundation, it also depends on the customer's taste. Furthermore, the predicament that my Luan shop is in isn't something that an outsider can see with a single glance. As Wan Han spoke, he placed the peacock back into the box, his tone slightly cold. Haha, Xiao Hua chuckled and said, I didn't know that fellow Taoist Luan was also someone who didn't like to be under others. Could it be that fellow Taoist is this kind of person? Wan Han was a little angry in his heart. He actually did not ask for Xiao Hua's name. Xiao Hua ignored Wan Han's anger. He looked around and said, I didn't come here to debate with fellow Taoist Luan. I have a business deal to discuss with fellow Taoist Luan. I wonder if fellow Taoist Luan has any objections? Haha, I am a businessman. Why would I give away the spirit stones that are delivered to my door? Wan Han laughed. He waved his hand at Wan Jianming, who was a little panicked, and said, Jianming, serve fellow Taoist some tea. Yes, disciple understands. Wan Jianming welcomed him and prepared to go out from the counter. I wonder what fellow Taoist has taken a fancy to? Wan Han smiled apologetically. Xiao Hua extended his hand and pointed at the materials in the store for artifact refinement. He said, I want to purchase some of the materials in your store. How about the price? All of the materials? Wan Han's face lit up as he asked. Xiao Hua nodded. Jianming, serve fellow Taoist good tea. Wan Han raised his head and ordered Wan Jianming, who was about to enter the backyard. Yes, disciple understands. Wan Jianming saw that there was a big customer and was overjoyed in his heart. He responded loudly. Fellow Taoist wants to refine your own artifacts. Wan Han turned his head and smiled apologetically. And that's right, Xiao Hua replied. In a while, I still have something to ask fellow Taoist Luan. I hope you won't be stingy with your guidance. Sure. Wan Han smiled and took out a storage pouch from the counter. With a wave of his hand, many materials were stored inside. Fellow Taoist Luan, why aren't you negotiating with I? Xiao Hua was stunned. He was still preparing to haggle with the other party. Yet Luan Han smiled and said, Fellow Taoist is a 12th level Qi refinement cultivator. Do you still lack spirit stones? I am underestimating fellow Taoist status by negotiating with fellow Taoist.
Huh?
Xiao Hua blinked his eyes. Looking at this cultivator, who just said that poor people have short ambition, he didn't know how to answer. After Luan Han took some of the materials of various colors and handed them to Xiao Hua, he asked, Fellow Taoist, are these materials enough? Xiao Hua looked and smiled. Fellow Taoist Luan, you should tell me the price first. Let's see if I have enough spirit stones in my storage pouch. Luan Han slightly nodded and transmitted a number to Xiao Hua. And not bad. What Fanny said was right. This Luan Han's character is really good. Hearing the price, Xiao Hua thought inwardly. Just as he was about to take out the spirit stones, his heart moved again. He smiled and said, These materials aren't enough. Fellow Taoist Luan, take 3 more. I will also triple the spirit stones. Okay. Luan Han was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, Fellow Taoist is so straightforward. I won't be unreasonable. Fellow Taoist only needs 2.5 more spirit stones. As he spoke, he took out more materials and handed them to Xiao Hua. At this time, Wang Jiaming served the spirit tea. Seeing that the materials in the store were much less, he was also happy and was much more respectful to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took a sip of the spirit tea and praised. He put the spirit stones in his storage pouch and handed them to Luan Han. Luan Han's divine sense swept over and knew that the number of spirit stones was not small. He smiled from ear to ear and said, Fellow Taoist, this spirit tea is unique to my Weeping Moon City. If fellow Taoist likes it, I will give it to you. Then, he ordered Luan Jiaming to go back to the backyard to get the spirit tea. No need, no need. Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him. He put away the materials and said, I still have something to discuss with fellow Taoist Luan. I just need fellow Taoist Luan to tell me everything you know. Sure. What questions does fellow Taoist have? Luan Han said with a smile. He was an expert in refining, so he was not afraid to ask about it. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, Ai's Grandmaster has a very special material. Divine sense can't control it, and it's very heavy. Ordinary cultivators can't pick it up. Well, the Grandmaster has said that this material is not a demonic tool. He wants to refine this material into a special magic weapon. Does fellow Taoist Luan have any ideas? A material that can't be controlled with divine sense? And it's very heavy? Luan Han was stunned. He closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He shook his head slightly and said, I don't seem to have encountered this situation. Xiao Hua's face was slightly disappointed. He glanced at the pentagonal table and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist's ancestral frigid flame won't work.
Oh.
Of course. Luan Han was enlightened. He patted his forehead and said with a smile, I can't do it. But my frigid flame can burn everything. The material fellow Taoist mentioned is definitely not a problem. Fellow Taoist Luan, are you sure you can do it? Xiao Hua's eyes were also filled with joy. He said, If possible, I will return to the mountain and ask Grandmaster to come over. When Luan Han heard that Xiao Hua wanted to ask Grandmaster to come over, he immediately hesitated. If nothing unexpected happened, the Grandmaster of an aura refining cultivator should be a core formation cultivator. That was someone the Luan clan could not offend. How could they dare to ask a core formation cultivator to come personally? While Luan Han was hesitating, Xiao Hua's brows slightly wrinkled. He seemed to have sensed something and his Buddhist sense swept outside. Xiao Hua's expression immediately became wonderful. At this time, Luan Han made up his mind. He raised his head and said, I can't be sure about this matter. I still have to ask the Grandmaster to make a decision later. That's for the best. Xiao Hua raised his brows and said with a smile, Then how about I accompany fellow Taoist Luan to see the Grandmaster together?
Oh,
Luan Han was even more surprised, but when he thought about how Xiaohua had just bought so many materials, he still nodded and said, "Since fellow Taoist has such intentions, then please." Soon after, Xiaohua followed Luan Han into the rear courtyard. Just as Xiaohua's figure disappeared from inside the shop, 3 cultivators came in through the door of Luan Ji's shop. 1 man and 2 women. The man looked to be in his 40s or 50s and was in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. The 2 women looked to be in their 20s or 30s and were also in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. The female cultivator at the front entered side by side with the male foundation building cultivator. Their behavior was very intimate. The female cultivator at the back had a dull expression, but when her gaze swept past Xiaohua's disappearing figure, she couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Why is this person's figure so familiar? Xiaohua? But soon after, the female cultivator smiled bitterly and shook her head. Xiaohua probably died long ago on Xiaoyu continent. Seniors. When Luan Jiaming saw that there were actually foundation-building cultivators coming over, he was bewildered. He promptly went to greet them and received them very respectfully. Xiaohua followed Luan Han into the rear courtyard. They walked through a layer of courtyards and arrived in front of a small house. Luan Han respectfully saluted and said, "Martial uncle, disciple Luan Han requests an audience." After a long while, an aged voice echoed, "Luan Han, do you need something? Didn't I tell you before? Family matters, go find someone else as soon as possible. This old man doesn't have much time left. I still have to cultivate in seclusion." Luan Han glanced at Xiaohua very awkwardly and replied as respectfully as before. Disciple met an honored guest today. This honored guest brought his core formation master to ask Disciple about a matter. Disciple didn't dare to take matters into his own hands. This time, "Martial uncle, please dispel my doubts." "Right, I still haven't asked for fellow Taoist's name," Luan Han asked in a low voice. "I am Zhang Hua," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Alas, come in." Hearing that it was a matter related to core formation cultivators, Luan Han's martial uncle didn't dare to neglect and said with a sigh, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, please." Luan Han raised his hand and gestured. Xiaohua also wasn't polite and entered the small house. The inside of the small house was somewhat dusky and also didn't have too many furnishings. There was a bookshelf on the wall. On the bookshelf were several books and also several jade slips. In the innermost part of the small house was a cloud bed. On top of it was a white-haired old man with extremely many wrinkles on his face. He was sitting cross-legged, and his cultivation was at the early stage of foundation establishment. Chapter 1692. Seeing such an old foundation establishment cultivator, Xiaohua thought for a moment, then immediately stepped forward and bowed, sending a voice transmission. Junior Zhang Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior Luan. Imperial Thunder Sect? Hearing Xiaohua announce his name, the foundation establishment cultivator was stunned, and a trace of light flashed across his eyes. He also sat up straight, flicked his sleeves, and sent a sound transmission with an aged voice. "I am Luan Qing, and have already stopped asking about the old affairs of the clan. I wonder what little friend Zhang has to ask." Luan Han heard Xiaohua's voice transmission and unconsciously frowned. "Luan Han, there's a foundation establishment cultivator in the shop. You should go greet him. Jiaming is too young. I'm afraid he can't handle it," Luan Qing instructed. Luan Han naturally knew there was a foundation establishment cultivator coming, so he stood up and said, "Disciple will go now, fellow Zhang. Please excuse me." When Luan Han left the hut, Luan Qing pointed her finger, and a light flashed, activating the restriction in the hut. "Little friend Zhang, if you have something to say, please say it." Luan Qing raised her head and stared at Xiaohua. Xiaohua repeated what he had told Luan Han before and said with an apologetic smile, "This thing was found in a dangerous place by martial ancestor. He knew it had great use, but he didn't know how to refine it. Even the Imperial Thunder Sect's artifact refining Grand Masters couldn't think of a way. Junior came out to travel this time with the intention of helping martial ancestor find a suitable method. Just now, in the shop of Wan Ji, I saw the frigid flame. This time, I boldly ask Senior to enlighten me. Can this frigid flame temper this strange thing? Alas, I'm afraid it can't. Wan Qing slightly shook her head. She stretched out her hand, and a huge ball of five-colored flame appeared in the center of her palm, swallowing the surrounding five-element spiritual energy. But the strange thing was, Xiaohua didn't feel any heat. Little friend Zhang, take a look. This frigid flame is admittedly the refining flame of my Wanji, but its power is already far inferior to before. It's certainly more than enough to refine ordinary magic tools, but it's beyond the power to refine elementary magic treasures. Not to mention the special material of your sect's martial ancestor. According to what this old man has seen and heard, that material must be something from beyond the heavens. And it is very likely to be something from beyond the heavens of the demon realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to be so heavy and uncontrollable by divine sense. For this kind of material, we can only use demonic flames or the refining methods of the demon realm. There is no other way. Ah, demonic fire? The refining method of the devil realm. Xiao Hua's heart shook. That's right. Xiao Hua had thought for a long time, but he had never considered the demon realm. The Great Wisdom Heavy Sword was similar to a demon weapon, so the demon realm's refining method would naturally have an effect on it. But where was the devil realm? How could he, a cultivator from the human realm, go to the devil realm? For Xiao Hua, this seemed to be something impossible. Could it be that there's no other way? Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and asked in a low voice. Haha. Wan Qing laughed and said, according to this old man's thoughts, other than the methods of the devil realm, there seems to be a legendary method of refining one's heart. However, your sect is one of the most famous sects in the country of Xi. Perhaps your sect's Qi refining grandmaster knows the method of refining one's heart. Since they can't do anything about it, this old man will only make a fool of himself. The method of refining one's heart. Xiao Hua secretly noted it down. The refining jade slip he obtained from Swallow Thunder Ridge didn't mention the method of refining one's heart. He also didn't know whether Swallow Thunder Ridge had the method of refining one's heart. Other than the method of refining one's heart. Xiao Hua still didn't give up. Wan Qing blinked and said with a smile, other than the method of refining one's heart, perhaps my Wan family's frigid death flame can reach Desheng. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, why can't the frigid death flame reach Desheng? It's a long story. Wan Qing said with a smile, not to mention that my Wan family's frigid death flame has been damaged for a long time. The number of disciples who can practice this fire art is also very few. Sai, forget it. This is my Wan family's ancestral inheritance. It's not worth telling outsiders. Seeing Wan Qing brush her sleeve and unwilling to say more, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, since no one in the Wan family can successfully practice this frigid death flame, then, Senior Wan, this frigid death flame's fire art, can you part with it? Wan Qing stared blankly, then a severe light flashed to her eyes. Staring at Xiao Hua for a moment, she said with a sneer, little friend Zhang, I respect you as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. That's why I'm talking to you nicely. This frigid death flame's fire art is my Wan family's ancestral inheritance. If I give it to you, how can my Wan family establish itself in Xiaoyu continent? Haha. Xiao Hua wasn't afraid of Wan Qing and said with a smile, if it's the Wan family's secret art, if it's the secret art that the Wan family relies on to establish itself, how can it be used in Wan family shop? Only for defensive arrays? Senior Wan, this junior is sincerely making a deal with Senior. If Senior has any conditions, please feel free to state them. If Junior is able to agree, I'll definitely agree without hesitation. This, Xiao Hua's words hit Wan Qing's soft spot. That's right, the frigid death flame has been used in arrays. What's there to talk about keeping it a secret? However, Wan Qing still shook her head. Where it's used is my Luan family's business. Little friend Zhang doesn't have the qualifications to say. Hee. I feel that the reason why things in this world are things is because there are things of equivalent value that can be exchanged. Senior Luan isn't willing to exchange. Is it because you think that I's cultivation is insufficient and can't take out something of equivalent value to the frigid death flame? Xiao Hua didn't beat around the bush and directly said. Wan Qing's gaze flickered, but she didn't say a word. Seeing this, Xiao Hua secretly rejoiced. Since she didn't say anything, that means there's room to bargain. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua extended his hand. A cluster of Samadhi true fire was born from the palm of his hand. That pure purple flame had a trace of scarlet. Samadhi true fire? Wanqing clearly knew what it was and cried out in surprise, Little friend Zhang. Oh, you're only at the Qi refinement realm. How can you use Samadhi true fire? Hee, this is naturally a bit of Junior's privacy, Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, in order to express my sincerity with Senior, I have no choice but to let Senior take a look. Wanqing took a deep breath and said, Little friend Zhang wants to exchange the fire technique of Samadhi true fire and the secret to using fire techniques at the Qi refinement realm with my Luan clan? I won't hide it from Senior. Junior's physique is special. That's why I'm able to use Samadhi true fire at the Qi refinement realm. There's no secret to this. What Junior can exchange is only the fire technique of Samadhi true fire, Xiao Hua said without hiding anything. Hearing this, Wanqing shook her head. Samadhi true fire's fire technique is indeed rare, but a beginner Samadhi true fire can't be used to refine weapons. Even if it can be used to refine weapons in the future, it may not be comparable to my Luan family's frigid death flame. But Junior's fire technique of Samadhi true fire is complete, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Wanqing thought for a moment, but still shook her head. Samadhi true fire's fire technique should already be comparable to frigid death flame's fire technique, Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, since Senior Ling still wants to bargain, how about adding this thing? As he spoke, Xiao Hua took out another item. Chapter 1693. Wanqing's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. Looking at the jade box that Xiao Hua handed over, he really couldn't think of what Xiao Hua could take out that could move his heart. Senior Luan, don't you want to open it and take a look? Xiao Hua's jade box had a restriction that isolated spiritual sense, so Wanqing couldn't see through it with his foundation establishment cultivation. This old man wants to see. Little friend Zhang is so confident, this jade box must have. Wanqing took it with a smile and opened the jade box while speaking. When he saw what was inside the jade box, he couldn't help but exclaim, Mother and child spirit fruit. 1,000-year-old mother and child spirit fruit. Indeed, in that jade box, a mother and child spirit fruit with golden runes faintly flowing on its surface was peacefully lying there. The golden runes also indicated the age of this mother and child spirit fruit. Looking at Wanqing's surprised expression, Xiao Hua snickered in his heart. Ever since he gave the 1,000-year-old mother and child spirit fruit to eldest senior brother Xiangyang, he had a plan in his heart. Because with the improvement of his cultivation, the age of the various spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits in the space also increased every day. If he didn't pick them diligently, he was afraid that each spiritual herb would be over 10,000 years old. These 10,000 years old things were certainly good, but it was quite dangerous to trade them. Therefore, Xiao Hua treated the mother and child spirit fruit the same as other rare spiritual herbs. He divided the area according to the age of 500 years, 1,000 years, and so on. Every once in a while, he would pick them once to ensure that all the spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits of each age were preserved. Although the mother and child spirit fruit was different from other spiritual fruits, Xiao Hua had kept it in the jade box for thousands of years. And now, the one in the space was already thousands of years old. Senior Luan, this mother and child spirit fruit was obtained by my master in an auction. One of them has already been taken by my 14th senior brother, who broke through the bottleneck of the early stage of foundation establishment. This spiritual fruit was given to this junior by my master to be used for future breakthroughs. Xiao Hua waited for Luan Qing's surprise to fade a little, then said with a smile, "However, this junior is still some distance away from foundation establishment. How can I break through the early stage of foundation establishment? What's more, master's matter is a big deal. If I can use this thing to exchange for the fire art and solve master's problem, why can't I break through my bottleneck?" Luan Qing stared into Xiao Hua's eyes, his gaze flickering. After a short moment, he glanced at the mother-child spirit fruit and said in a deep voice, "This old man has been stuck at the bottleneck of the early stage of foundation establishment for several decades. 20 years ago, I already took the Origin Splendor Pill. Young friend Zhang, do you think this old man still has a chance?" Xiao Hua knew that the Essence Splendor Pill was a medicinal pill used by early foundation establishment cultivators to break through their barriers. It was concocted from bright flower fruit, essence returning grass, Elian green fruit, danhe, and other rare spiritual plants. Among them, danhe was the rarest, but it was also the most important. However, it was also the least used. Of course, he didn't know if eldest senior brother Xiangyang had taken it or not, but since Weeping Moon City had the Elian green fruit, it was normal for Luan Qing to have taken the Huayuan pill. Therefore, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "My 14th senior brother has also taken the Huayuan pill." Since he could use the mother-child spirit fruit to break through the bottleneck, Senior Luan should be able to do so as well. Of course, as for whether Senior Luan can really do it, this junior can't guarantee. Xiao Hua's voice had just fallen when suddenly, a murderous intent came from where Luan Qing was. Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced at Luan Qing's hands that were hidden in his Taoist robe. His expression didn't change as he chuckled and said, this junior's bottom line. This junior sincerely wants to help martial ancestor. If Senior Luan isn't willing, then this junior won't force it. Oh, right, I heard from the senior brother in the inn that there is a mysterious place in Weeping Moon City that can repair magic tools and magic weapons. Presumably, they also have a fire art similar to Ling Yi's Zhuhua. After this junior and senior brother repair the magic weapons, this junior can also make a deal with them. Presumably, this is also okay, right? Facing an early foundation establishment cultivator at such a close distance, to be honest, Xiao Hua wasn't the slightest bit afraid. After the battle with Zhen Hao and Zhen Ming, he had incomparable confidence in his Zhu Meng. Even an early foundation establishment cultivator of the Imperial Thunder School couldn't avoid it. How could a foundation establishment cultivator of the Luan family be his opponent? Looking at Xiao Hua's confident words, and then looking at Xiao Hua's eyes that didn't have the slightest trace of panic, Luan Qing's killing intent suddenly became discouraged. A kind of absurd feeling arose spontaneously, as if this cultivator of the 12th layer of qi refining could easily kill him, even if he had already set up a powerful restriction around the hut. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Luan Qingkai suddenly smiled, and his killing intent was extinguished. He said, "Little friend Zhang is indeed a filial person. For the sake of your master, you actually gave up the opportunity to break through to the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. Since that's the case, how can this old man not help you?" As he said this, he waved his sleeve, and the jade box disappeared. A trace of a smile appeared on Xiao Hua's face. He took out the jade slit that recorded the Samadhi True Fire from his space and handed it to Luan Qing. He said, "Junior obtained this from a cultivator. It doesn't have much to do with my Imperial Thunder School. Senior Luan, please feel free to use it." Good. Luan Qing was overjoyed. He took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He nodded. This Samadhi True Fire is complete. In the past, this old man also obtained one, but it was abnormally damaged and couldn't be used. After Luan Qing put away the Samadhi True Fire art, he took out a rather old jade slip and handed it over. He said, "This is the Ling Yi fire art that this old man comprehended. It contains this old man's understanding. Little friend Zhang, please take it." "Many thanks, Senior Luan." Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect Luan Qing to be So generous. Taking out the jade slip, Xiaohua casually scanned it and stored it in his space. He knew Wanqing wouldn't deceive him with false information.
What?
Little friend Zhang, won't you look carefully? A trace of a strange smile appeared on Wanqing's face. There's no need, right? Xiaohua was slightly dazed. Yet Wanqing shook his head. Little friend Zhang should still look carefully. Otherwise, if there's any mishap and little friend Zhang returns to the Imperial Thunder Sect to denounce us, my Luan family won't be able to bear it. Hearing these words, Xiaohua's heart suddenly thumped. Not good. Sure enough, when he took out the jade slip again and looked carefully for a moment, a trace of gloominess appeared on his face. I didn't expect. This Lingyi fire art is actually different from the Samadhi true fire. Xiaohua was endlessly regretful in his heart. A trace of bitterness appeared in his mouth. The Samadhi true fire is an ethereal fire. The fire art that uses the Samadhi true fire can be created on its own. But this Lingyi fire is a fire of the 5 elements. It can't be created out of thin air. It must have a flame seed. In other words, a flame seed. Sigh, didn't Wan Han say it just now? His Luan family's Lingyi fire is the flame seed of the immortal realm. I'm afraid that's the meaning behind it, right? I thought that I was infallible and exchanged fire arts with others. Not to mention that I suffered a loss in the fire art. Even that 1,000-year-old child mother's spirit fruit was given away to others for nothing. No wonder. Wanqing wanted me to look clearly, and no wonder Wanqing could easily take out the Luan family's ancestral fire art to exchange. Seeing the regret on Xiaohua's face, Wanqing smiled and said, Little friend Zhang, did you understand?
Haha.
Suddenly, Xiaohua smiled and put away the jade slip. He said, reporting to Senior Luan, Junior already understood. This is all Junior's recklessness. It can't be blamed on Senior Luan. Good. Wanqing's face revealed a strange expression. He clapped his hands and said, as expected of a disciple of a famous sect. Only now do I truly believe in little friend Zhang. As he spoke, Wanqing slapped his forehead. A speck of 5-colored fire flew out from his glabella and landed in Wanqing's palm. This is a speck of the fire seed that I painstakingly cultivated. Although little friend Zhang only exchanged fire arts, without this fire seed, that fire art is just trash. Little friend Zhang took so many things to exchange for the fire art, but you suffered a big loss. Wanqing smiled and said, Little friend Zhang is so magnanimous, how can I cherish it? Otherwise, even if you took the child mother's spirit fruit, it would be impossible to break through the bottleneck. Finished speaking, he pointed his finger. That 5-colored fire flew in front of Xiaohua's eyes. His eyes watched the 5 colors of the 5-colored fire faintly circulate. A burst of joy emerged in Xiaohua's heart. He opened his mouth, and that fire was immediately absorbed into his body.
Ah!
Wanqing was startled. He didn't expect Xiaohua to be able to absorb the icicle flame into his body so easily. This kind of absorption method was commonly used by Foundation Establishment or Golden Core cultivators to absorb magic treasures. Perhaps what I said about magic treasures just now wasn't false. Wanqing had a trace of lingering fear. At the same time, he rejoiced that he reined in the horse at the precipice in time. Thus, Wanqing's eyes turned and he said, Little friend Zhang, I still have something to remind little friend Zhang.
Senior Luan, please speak.
Junior is all ears. Xiaohua was in a great mood and said with a smile, My Luan family's icicle flame is extremely powerful. According to ancient legends, it's the fire seed of the immortal realm's fire. Wanqing organized his thoughts and said, But now little friend Zhang has also seen it. Right now, my Luan family's icicle flame can only be used for refining. It's even used for setting up formations. It really doesn't match its reputation. The name of the immortal realm's fire seed has already become a joke in the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua slightly nodded. He didn't have any expectations for this icicle flame. He only wanted to use it for refining, especially to temper the Great Wisdom Sword. As for whether or not it was the fire seed of the immortal realm's fire seed, He didn't care. The reason why it ended up like this is also related to the cultivation of the icicle flame. Luan Qing said again, I believe that little friend Zhang has already somewhat understood. The cultivation of this icicle flame is completely a process of cultivation. You must have a fire seed in order to cultivate your own icicle flame. And this fire seed directly determines the power and quality of the icicle flame. According to my Luan family's records, when the Luan family was at its peak, my icicle flame had the ability to destroy the heavens and earth. Even the so-called large sects at that time had to avoid it. And as time passed, my Luan family's fire seed became weaker, and also more and more disorderly. Naturally, its power also became more and more unbearable. Chapter 1694. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the door to Luan Qing's hut opened, and an expressionless Xiao Hua came out. He then turned around, bowed deeply, and followed a boy who had been waiting outside for a long time to walk to the front of Luan's shop. As he walked, Xiao Hua pondered. Senior Luan said clearly that this frigid flame relies entirely on the original flame. If I use the flame he gave me to cultivate it, I can naturally produce my own frigid flame. Of course, this frigid flame can also be used to refine tools, but it will lose a lot of its magical powers. But when it comes to magical powers, Senior Luan is vague, as if he himself doesn't understand. This is strange. But what if I don't use Senior Luan's flame? Where would I go to find the flame of the 5 elements? Especially the flame of the 5 elements that Senior Luan mentioned? That flame of the 5 elements is the real frigid flame, the flame of the true immortal realm. This world, I'm afraid it has never existed, right? Perhaps only the immortal realm has it. Xiao Hua shook his head. What is the origin of the 5 elements? Just as he was thinking, a foundation establishment cultivator's divine sense swept over, and at the same time, several gazes stopped on Xiao Hua's face. The boy also said in a low voice, This disciple will see you off here. Fellow Taoist, please. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, seemingly not arrogant because of the boy's low cultivation level. Seeing that the boy was a bit uneasy, Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at Luan's shop. When he saw the disappointed expression on the face of a 12th layer qi refining female cultivator, he couldn't help but frown and secretly say, Why haven't they left yet? This female cultivator was none other than Xiao Hua's senior sister, Xiao Xinrui. Soon after, Xiao Hua's gaze turned from Xiao Xinrui's face to the other 2 cultivators. The other one had a charming face and a curvy figure. Naturally, she was none other than Jiang Yan of 100 Herb Sect. However, when Xiao Hua saw her more than 10 years ago, Jiang Yan was in the 11th layer of qi refining. Now, she was at the peak of the 12th layer. Moreover, her eyebrows were raised, and the corners of her eyes were charming. Needless to say, she had already dual cultivated with someone. In the end, Xiao Hua's gaze landed on the foundation establishment cultivator. This foundation establishment cultivator was not Jiang Fan. This cultivator had a short stature and was even shorter than Jiang Yan, who was standing next to him. Moreover, this foundation establishment cultivator looked like a burly man. Rather than calling him an immortal cultivator, it would be better to call him a farmer who managed a farm. The worst thing was that after this cultivator's gaze swept past Xiao Hua, he didn't pay any attention to him. He only tightly stuck the corner of his eyes to Xiao Xinrui's body, as if there was something there that attracted him. Oh, fellow Taoist Zhang, you're out? When Luan Han saw Xiao Hua come out, he immediately went to greet him. After all, Xiao Hua was very generous, completely unlike this foundation establishment cultivator. He looked left and right, but didn't take out any spirit stones. Moreover, Jiang Ruan, who was next to him, was full of ridicule. She said something about how they couldn't compare to the 7-skill sect and how they were deceived by the waiter. Her words clearly indicated that she wanted Luan Han to lower the price. If it was before, Luan Han might have tolerated it. However, Xiao Hua had just been generous. Luan Han despised him in his heart and was too lazy to lower the price. Although his mouth was respectful, in his heart, he had already trampled on their image countless times. Now that he saw Xiaohua come out, he naturally greeted him warmly. And thank you for your guidance, fellow Taoist Luan. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. Although I didn't get anything particularly useful, this trip wasn't in vain. Hee, no problem, no problem. Luan Han grinned. Fellow Taoist Zhang is so forthright, you'll be welcomed anywhere. As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Jiang Yan.
Fellow Taoist Luan, what do you mean by that?
Jiang Yan was furious. After all, she was the young master of the 100 Herb sect. When had she ever been looked down upon like this? Oh, fellow Taoist Zhang, what did I say? What did I mean? I was just praising fellow Taoist Zhang for being generous. I didn't say others weren't generous. How could Luan Han be afraid of the 100 Herb sect? He naturally retorted. You. Jiang Yan raised her eyebrows and her chest heaved up and down. She was about to get angry. Sister? Xiao Xianrui's gaze shifted from Xiaohua's somewhat familiar figure and unfamiliar face to her. She quickly whispered, "This is Weeping Moon City. It's better to be careful." Seeing that the Foundation establishment cultivator didn't say anything and was still looking at Xiao Xianrui out of the corner of his eyes, Jiang Yan couldn't help but feel angry. She sneered and said, "What? You want to be careful in Weeping Moon City? Why didn't you say that when my big brother was here? He just went back to build his foundation and you came out to talk?" Sister? Xiao Xianrui was stunned. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Yan. She couldn't understand why Jiang Yan was acting so strangely. "I wanted to go to the 7 Skill Sect shop, but you said the shop had a good reputation and insisted on coming here. This is your first time in Weeping Moon City, right? How do you know the shop has a good reputation?" "Oh, I know. You must have been here before. But who did you come with? No wonder you didn't go with my big brother when he went back to build his foundation. So, you wanted to come to Weeping Moon City. What's your purpose in coming to Weeping Moon City? Are you looking for someone? Is this person in Luan Ji's shop?" Jiang Yan looked at Xiaohua as she spoke. Xiaohua's eyes widened, and he helplessly rubbed his chin. He wanted to leave, but the one being bullied was Xiao Xianrui. He naturally had to stay. Senior sister really is enduring humiliation. Every day in 100 Herbs sect must be like a year. Xiaohua's heart was filled with hatred. It's a pity that I'm only at the early stage of foundation establishment. Otherwise, I would definitely kill my way to 100 Herbs sect. Sister, how can you say that? This isn't 100 Herbs sect. How can we let outsiders see us as a joke? Xiao Xianrui was anxious. She stepped forward and tugged at Jiang Yan's sleeve. "What are you tugging at?" Jiang Yan impatiently tugged at her sleeve and said with extreme annoyance, "I don't know what my big brother was thinking that day, but he took a fancy to you. I don't know how many elixirs and miraculous medicines he used to raise your cultivation to the 12th level of qi refining. But where is foundation establishment? You've been cultivating for 10 years. Why haven't you reached foundation establishment? My 100 Herbs sex elixirs have all been thrown into the water." When she heard foundation establishment, Xiao Xianrui's face turned pale. Her eyes were watery. She whispered in shame, Sister-in-law has done her best. Foundation establishment isn't something that can be achieved just because you say so. Sister-in-law didn't come to 100 Herbs sect because she wanted to gain more experience and have more hope of reaching foundation establishment. Hee, your words are better than a song. Who knows what you mean? Who knows what you're planning? Is this man? Jiang Yan saw that Xiaohua's cultivation was only at the 12th level of qi refining. She was emboldened. She glanced at him and sneered.
Pung.
The spiritual energy in Luan Ji's shop suddenly became chaotic. Then there was another "pa" sound. Everyone in Luan Ji's shop was stunned. Chapter 1695. You, an aura refining cultivator, actually dared to hit me? Jiang uncovered her face with one hand. There were 2 reddish marks on her jade-white face. They were the marks left by Xiao Hua's left hand. Xiao Hua, on the other hand, was looking at the Foundation Establishment Cultivator next to Jiang'an. His eyes flashed with a cold glint as he said coldly, "This young master is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Which sect are you from? You can talk about your own matters behind closed doors. Why involve this young master for no reason?" This young master slap was only a warning. If you provoke this young master again, this young master will send out the thunder sound transmitting talisman from my sect and kill you. This young master doesn't believe that Fairy Chiue can ignore the fact that a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect is being bullied. Hearing Xiao Hua say that he was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the Foundation Establishment Cultivator, who had just released his pressure and taken out his magic tool, had a huge change in expression. He was filled with regret. In fact, as early as a moment ago, when he saw Xiao Hua's face suddenly change color and his figure sway, he waved his hand and cast a spell, wanting to block Xiao Hua. Who would have thought that the spell he was full of confidence in couldn't block Xiao Hua at all? Xiao Hua also cast a spell and easily broke through his defense. Moreover, Xiao Hua was right in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua's palm slapped Jiang Lian's face. Although Jiang Lian tried his best to dodge, Xiao Hua's movements were really too fast. This is probably the Imperial Thunder Sect's thunder escape technique. That Foundation Establishment Cultivator thought to himself. Moreover, although this aura refining cultivator is under my pressure, he's not afraid of me at all. If he wasn't confident, how could it be possible? Even if I can kill him, what about Wanshop? What about Sobbing Moon City? It's hard to hide the shame. The Foundation Establishment Cultivator secretly complained. The Imperial Thunder Sect? Wan Han was also shocked. Seeing the confrontation between Xiao Hua and that Foundation Establishment Cultivator, he hurriedly took half a step forward and bowed deeply. He said to the 2 of them, "Senior Yu, fellow Daoist Zhang, please don't be impatient. For I's sake, let's both take half a step back. Firstly, this is a misunderstanding. Secondly, this is Sobbing Moon City." That's fine. Fellow Daoist Luan, I have received a lot of benefits from you. How could I make things difficult for you? This is Senior Yu, right? Junior is a little rough and inexperienced, so I've made Senior laugh. I hope Senior can forgive me for my rudeness. Xiao Hua immediately said with a bright smile. Seeing that Xiao Hua was still able to speak so normally under his pressure, Senior Yu was shocked and hurriedly withdrew his pressure. He said with a smile, "It was my wife who spoke too much and provoked little friend Zhang. How can you blame it all on little friend Zhang? I apologize on behalf of my wife." He. When Xiao Hua saw the Foundation Building Cultivator withdraw his oppressive might, he immediately bowed in greeting. Bowing to a Foundation Building Cultivator wasn't a big deal, but the Foundation Building Cultivator raised his arm and blocked Xiao Hua's salute. Xiao Hua also seized the opportunity to get up and laughed. "Everything is a misunderstanding. I am Zhang Hua from the Lightning Controlling Sect. I still haven't asked for Senior's name. I am Yu Tsong from the 10,000 Flowers Valley." The Foundation Establishment Cultivator cupped his hands and said. Then, he pointed at Jiang Ao and said, "This is I's humble Jiang Ao." Then, he pointed at Xiao Xinrui and said, "This is Xiao Xinrui, the wife of the 100 Herbs Gate's young master." Xiao Hua greeted the 2 with a smile. Jiang Ao clenched her teeth and returned the greeting under Yu Tsong's strict gaze. Xiao Xinrui, on the other hand, had already determined that Xiao Hua wasn't Xiao Hua. She greeted Xiao Hua with an indifferent expression. After the greeting, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Senior Yu, it's rare for Senior to be so magnanimous. Come, I wonder what Senior has taken a fancy to in this store. Junior will buy it to apologize to fellow Daoist Zhang." "Don't mention it, there's no need. Isn't there a saying in the secular world? No discord, no concord. Since we know each other, there's no need to mention the previous matters." Yu Tsong flicked his big sleeve and said, "I actually admire fellow Daoist Zhang's boldness. If I have time, I will hold a banquet in the Drunken Immortal Pavilion, and invite fellow Taoist Zhang or your sex teachers to come over for a chat. How about it? This is difficult. Xiao Hua spread his hands and said, I want to have a chat with Senior Yu, but the timing isn't right. No matter, no matter. Yu Tsong waved his hand again and again. Since it's not right, then forget it. And then Junior has been rude. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and bid farewell. Junior will take his leave first. When Yu Tsong nodded with a smile, Xiao Hua said to Luan Han again, Fellow Taoist Luan, bring the peacock from the box. I will give it to my junior sister. As he said that, he didn't ask any questions and handed over some high-grade spirit stones. Luan Han couldn't stop smiling and waved his hand again and again. There's no need for so many. Xiao Hua took the spirit stones and threw them on the table with a wave of his hand. That fatty Luan Jiaming looked at Luan Han's expression and quickly put away the spirit stones and took out the peacock doll.
Ah!
Seeing the peacock doll, Xiao Xinrui couldn't help but open her mouth slightly. This doll was far inferior to the peacock fantasy, but it was still very beautiful. Xiao Xinrui had always liked peacocks, so it was natural for her to be envious. Xiao Hua was originally paying attention to Xiao Xinrui. Seeing this, he smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao also likes this peacock? Xiao Xinrui knew that he was testing her, so she glanced at Xiao Hua and said indifferently, It's not that I like it, but I've seen something similar before. Oh, so it's like that. Xiao Hua nodded, glanced at Yu Tsong and said with a smile, Junior just said that he wanted to apologize to Senior. What a coincidence. This thing is for fellow Taoist Xiao.
Goodbye.
As he said that, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the peacock flew in front of Xiao Xinrui and stopped. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and walked out of Luan Ji's shop without looking back. Xiao Xinrui was slightly stunned. She wanted to greet Xiao Hua, but she looked at Yukong. After all, Xiao Hua said that to Yukong since it's like this. Fellow Taoist Xiao should accept it. Yu Tsong smiled and stared at Xiao Xinrui with a fervent gaze. Then, she looked at Xiao Hua's gradually disappearing figure with thought-provoking eyes. Husband, it was clearly the lowly concubine who was beaten. How did my sister-in-law get away with it? Jiang Hong couldn't help but become anxious again. Her voice fell into Xiao Hua's ears as he walked out of the shop. 100 Grass sect really is unscrupulous. In order to annex Zhang Huaming, they used despicable means to kill Xiao Yuehong and 2 senior martial brothers. In order to expand their power, they married their daughter to a dwarf from 100 Flower Valley. An early foundation establishment cultivator can make 100 Grass sect act like this. No wonder Yu Tsong didn't dare to cause trouble when he knew I was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiao Hua sneered. After walking for a while and seeing that there was no one around, he walked into a dark corner. Not long after, a cultivator with a different appearance, figure, and cultivation base walked out of the dark corner. He looked around and slowly returned to Luan Ji's shop. Outside Luan Ji's shop, Yu Tsong and the others had already come out. They were walking out of this remote street. The 3 of them had completely different expressions on their faces. Jiang'an was angry, but her eyes kept glancing at Xiao Xinrui. Xiao Xinrui's face was full of awkwardness. Although she wasn't holding the peacock doll in her hand, it was as if the doll was in her hand. She looked at Yu Tsong again. His face was expressionless, but there was a kind of gloominess in his eyes, as if he was angry and jealous. Just a few steps away from Luan Ji's shop, Jiang'an opened her mouth and said sarcastically, Husband, you look so mighty in front of me every day. How come you met a 12th layer chi refining brat? Shut up. Without waiting for Jiang'an to finish, Yu Tsong shouted, his eyes wide open. He glared at Jiang'an and said, Isn't it all because of you? It's fine if you talk nonsense, but you have no reason to drag in a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. What kind of sect is the Imperial Thunder sect? Do you still need me to tell you? If it was a disciple of an ordinary sect, how could I let you suffer? Even if I have to risk being punished by Fairy Chiwa, I will kill this bastard with one palm. Jiang'an gritted her teeth. She knew that Yu Tsong was right. If an accident really happened to a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the Imperial Thunder Sect could destroy the 100 Herbs Gate with one little toe. As for the 100 Flowers Valley, maybe they could do it with 3 or 4 little toes. Wife, don't be angry. We can't fight with a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect in Chiua City, but I didn't say that we can't fight outside. Yu Tsong's face showed a trace of affection. He said in a low voice, I've already used some means to mark that brat called Zhang Hua. When we get out of Chiua City, I will avenge you. Hearing this, Jiang'an beamed with joy. Her eyes were like silk. She took Yu Tsong's hand and said, This lowly concubine knows that my husband loves me the most. Yu Tsong's eyes also flashed with a lustful light, which then fell on Xiao Xinrui. By the way, husband, didn't Zhang Hua say that he was with a master of the Imperial Thunder Sect? If there is a Foundation establishment cultivator, you have to be careful. Don't fight, or you will cause trouble for the 100 Flowers Valley and the 100 Herbs Gate. Jiang'an thought again and hurriedly said with concern, Why don't we just let it go? I'm not injured anyway. You're indeed a good wife and mother. I understand. For your sake, I won't bicker with the Imperial Thunder Sect. Yu Tsong used his hand to carefully stroke Jiang'an's butt. He narrowed his eyes and said, When we get back to the inn, we will rest for a night. Tomorrow I will go out and take a look. If that bastard has already left, I will let him go. Hearing Yu Tsong say that they would rest for a night, Jiang'an's eyes seemed to be about to water. Xiao Xinrui frowned and said in a low voice, Senior Yu, my husband has already returned to Yellow Flower Ridge. I don't want to train anymore. I will go back now and bid farewell to you. Sister-in-law should have gone back long ago. Jiang'an's face was bright red as she spoke. Fellow Daoist Xiao, why don't you stay for a few more days? Yu Tsong's face was somewhat disappointed. He urged her to stay. You just had a conflict with the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. If they hold a grudge, the way back will not be safe. Wait a few more days. I will personally send you off. Thank you for your concern, Senior. I will take my leave. Xiao Xinrui bowed her head, cupped her hands, and quickly left. You and the others, escort young sect master's wife away. Jiang'an raised her head and shouted at the 100 Herbs Gate disciples who were around the 9th layer of Qi refining. Yes, disciple understands. After the disciples agreed, they followed Xiao Xinrui, who had her head lowered, and left. The other disciples followed Jiang'an and Yukong. When they were far away, Xiao Hua's figure gradually appeared in a corner of the street. He patted a shiny invisibility talisman in his hand and put it back into his space. Damn it, where did Yu Tsong leave a mark on my body? Why can't I find it after searching for so long with my Buddhist awareness? Xiao Hua saw that there was no one nearby and blurted out curses. Chapter 1696. Xiao Xinrui was very sad. Unspeakable sadness. Perhaps seeing Xiao Hua's back reminded her of the past that she didn't want to remember, which made her sad. Or maybe the peacock doll that Xiao Hua gave her reminded her of the peacock fantasy, her birthday, and the years when she was protected by her family, which made her sad. Or maybe it was because Xiao Hua claimed to be a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect and forced Yu Tsong, who was at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, not daring to make things difficult for him. Or maybe it was because of her background and self-pity. Or maybe it was because the arrogant Xiao Hua was at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, which made her think of her own 12th layer of the Qi refining realm and the knot in her heart that she couldn't break through to the Foundation establishment realm. In short, Xiao Xinrui stepped on the spirit camel carriage absent-mindedly. Surrounded by several disciples of the 100 Herb sect, she randomly chose a direction and left the Weeping Moon City. However, after everyone had flown for half a meal, a disciple finally mustered the courage to call out in a low voice, "Young madam, where are we going?" "Back to the 100 Herb sect, of course." Xiao Xinrui replied angrily. "But are we going to fly back to the 100 Herbs sect like this?" The disciple whispered. The ship in the sect was taken away by the young master. "How can we?" "Alas." Hearing this, Sha Xianrui immediately stopped in the air. The Weeping Moon City was very far from the 100 Herb sect, and now was not the time for training. There was no reason for them to use the teleportation formation in the Weeping Moon City. What's wrong with me? Xiao Xianrui smiled bitterly and waved her hand. Back to the Weeping Moon City. At this moment, behind Xiao Xianrui and the others, a figure flew quickly from the direction of the Weeping Moon City and came to their side in the blink of an eye. Who is this? Xiao Xianrui scanned with her divine sense and found that the person was unfamiliar. She felt a little strange, but she didn't care and turned to fly away. Unexpectedly, when Xiao Xianrui flew less than 10 feet, she suddenly saw the cultivator, who was about 10 feet away from her, stop and give her a very strange smile. Oh no! Even if Xiao Xianrui didn't have much experience, she knew that this cultivator was coming for them. However, she didn't understand. This cultivator was only in the 11th layer of qi refining. Why would he dare to attack her? Moreover, there were several 9th layer qi refining disciples next to him. How can he be so bold? Xiao Xianrui was surprised, but she didn't dare to be negligent. She clapped her hands, and a dark green machete appeared in her hands. The scimitar was only half a foot long, and the blade was engraved with different runes. The small handle of the scimitar was held in Xiao Xianrui's hand. This was Xiao Xianrui's magic weapon, the Crescent Moon. Xiao Xianrui was alert, and so were the other disciples of the 100 Herbs Gate. They took out their yellow talismans and stood in front of Xiao Xianrui, scolding. Where did this madman come from? What do you want? Haha, what can I do? The cultivator laughed and said, To take your lives. As he spoke, the cultivator was already less than 10 meters away from them.
Go.
Everyone was furious. They activated their magic power, and the yellow talismans in their hands shot out. Xiao Xianrui also sneered. She waved her hand, and the crescent moon absorbed her magic power. A dark green light flashed in the air and streaked towards the cultivator. However, the cultivator didn't seem to panic when he saw the fireballs, water arrows, and other attacks. His face was full of mockery. In this mocking expression, the cultivator opened his mouth, and a green and red sword light shot out from his mouth. Flying sword talisman? Xiao Xianrui's heart relaxed. With her knowledge of Shang Huaming and the 100 Herbs Gate, she could only think of it as a flying sword talisman. But then, the green and red sword light suddenly flashed, and 2 of them flew out. Then, with another 2 flashes, there were 8 of them. Xiao Xianrui couldn't help but turn pale with fright. An inconceivable feeling rose from the bottom of her heart. Flying swords? This was something she had accidentally heard a few days ago, when Yu Tsong was showing off. She didn't expect to actually encounter it today. Now that she thought of the flying sword, Xiao Xianrui felt as if her heart had fallen into an ice cave. The 8 beams of sword light did not disappoint her. Right in front of her eyes, they cut through many yellow talismans as if they were pieces of yellow paper. At the same time, they pierced the throats of several disciples of the 100 Herbs sect at a speed faster than her crescent moon. These disciples did not fight back at all, and their protective brilliance was as useless as a piece of paper. Seeing the disciples fall into the air, Xiao Xianrui's eyes narrowed. She activated her magic power and once again waved her crescent moon. A ray of light that was much brighter than before drew an arc in the air and shot towards the cultivator. At this time, the cultivator opposite Xiao Xianrui seemed to have used up a lot of his magic power. He opened his mouth, and the flying sword disappeared into it. Then, the cultivator clapped his hand, and several yellow talismans appeared in his hand. As he activated his magic power, several fireball talismans flew towards Xiao Xianrui. Fortunately, seeing this, Xiao Xianrui's previously despaired heart gave birth to a glimmer of hope. This guy probably didn't use a flying sword but something similar. Because the magic power used is too great, it can't last long. I am at the 12th layer of qi refining. Facing a cultivator who has used up a lot of his magic power, I can win. Rumble. With a few loud sounds, the crescent moon's brilliance was blocked by the fireball talismans. Immediately, it exploded, and a heat wave rushed towards them. What fireball talisman? How can it be more powerful than the best fireball talisman? Xiao Xinrui was stunned. She didn't dare to be negligent. She also slapped her storage bag and took out all kinds of defensive yellow talismans, regardless of whether they were defensive or offensive. With a shake of her hand, she threw them out, wanting to block Xiao Hua's fireball talismans. At the same time, her right hand continuously waved the scimitar, chopping out from different angles to block all directions, lest the cultivator take advantage of the chaos to attack in front of her. Her left hand was also forming a hand seal, preparing a suitable spell. Seeing the brilliance of the crescent moon, Xiao Xinrui's heart slightly calmed down. She knew that the enemy wouldn't attack for the time being. Then, she used her divine sense to search for an opening to escape. Although the opponent's cultivation was at the 10th layer of Qi refining, that strange sword light was too powerful. She knew that she wasn't a match for it. Now that the opponent's fireball talisman and other attacks were obviously to recover his magic power, if she didn't take the opportunity to escape now, when the sword light appeared again, it would be the time of her death. However, just as Xiao Xinrui was about to escape, a figure like a ghost floated and flashed through the brilliance that Xiao Xinrui had just hacked out. Often, it would bypass the brilliance that Xiao Xinrui had used all her strength to hack out, easily dodging the brilliance that Xiao Xinrui had used all her strength to hack out. Moreover, the cultivator's figure was very fast. In the blink of an eye, the distance between them was 20 feet. Which family did I provoke this fiend? Xiao Xinrui was shocked. She urged all the magic power in her body. The crescent moon in her hand flashed with a dark green brilliance, and a ray of light shot out from the scimitar. Xiao Xinrui knew that she couldn't escape. She turned around, shouted, and raised her scimitar to hack out. Chapter 1697. Xiao Xinrui's heart trembled with fear. She urged all the spiritual energy in her body and poured it into the crescent moon. The crescent moon suddenly turned into a dark green crescent moon. Xiao Xinrui's snow-white hand drew a line. The dark green brilliance was like a lover's charming glance, extremely accurate and extremely fast, shooting towards the cultivator who didn't have any magic weapon in his hand. Xiao Xinrui thought that even if this cultivator had a fireball more powerful than the best fireball talisman, this blade light would inevitably cut everything in front of it into two halves. That cultivator would absolutely not easily dodge it. Unfortunately, looking at the coldness in the cultivator's eyes and then looking at the cultivator's expressionless face, Xiao Xinrui's little bit of confidence that had just been born wavered again. Sure enough, just as Xiao Xinrui urged her cultivation method and tried her best to urge her spiritual energy, the cultivator suddenly stretched out his hand and took out a huge black hammer from nowhere. Then, as if it was light, he smashed it forward, directly facing the crescent moon. Demon weapon. Xiao Xinrui was shocked and almost blurted out, "You are a disciple of the heavenly demon sect." Just as Xiao Xinrui exclaimed, the demonic hammer had already touched the light of the crescent moon. Clang, a loud sound rang out. This sound was both sharp and loud. The black head of the demonic hammer was not damaged at all, but the dazzling dark green brilliance just now was like glass shattering, turning into little fluorescent lights, scattering in the air. Sure enough, it's a demonic weapon. Xiao Xinrui's mouth had a trace of bitterness. She clearly knew the difference between her magic weapon and a real demonic weapon. "I'm afraid I'm going to die." Xiao Xinrui despaired. Her eyes looked at the demonic hammer that seemed to have encountered no resistance and continued to rush towards her. Xiao Xinrui steeled her heart and waved the crescent moon again. Kacha, the crescent moon was just a magic weapon, and it was a magic weapon of a refinement cultivator. How could Xiao Xinrui use her own body to attack the demonic weapon? With a crisp sound, the crescent moon suddenly shattered into several pieces. The fragments were like the broken shadow of the crescent moon in the rippling water, floating in the air. "Go to hell." Xiao Xianrui heard the cultivator's ferocious roar, and the shadow of the demonic hammer in front of her grew larger and larger, covering her entire vision. An unparalleled force pressed down on her forehead, and within this force, there seemed to be a strange undulation. Mother! It was very strange. Under the shadow of Death's shadow, Xiao Xianrui's first thought, but a vague image of a female cultivator that she had depicted countless times in her heart since childhood, but she had never succeeded in depicting a female cultivator's image. An unyielding, a kind of unwillingness spontaneously rose. Although this fluctuation was extremely faint and almost undetectable, what exactly was this fluctuation? Chi, and the Qi and Qi instantly began to condense into Qi. Alas, I'm finally going to build my foundation. What a pity. Xiao Xianrui's heart flashed with a trace of joy, but as soon as the joy appeared, Xiao Xianrui felt a chill on her forehead. The demonic hammer had already touched her shiny skin. It's too late. Xiao Xianrui suddenly seemed to have understood. She slowly closed her eyes. However, after a few seconds, the sharp pain didn't come, and the force on her forehead also disappeared. Xiao Xianrui opened her eyes in shock and saw the strange cultivator standing not far away with a smile on his face. His voice was also strange. Fellow Daoist Xiao, do you want to use the spirit accumulation talisman? Or do you want to build your foundation now? Ah? Xiao Xianrui didn't understand the situation for a while. This change was really too fast. The cultivator frowned and urged, Fellow Daoist Xiao, don't you want to take the foundation establishment pill or use the spirit accumulation talisman? Spirit accumulation talisman? Xiao Xianrui was a little surprised. She quickly took out a foundation establishment pill from her storage bag and opened her mouth to take it.
Wait!
The cultivator shouted. Xiao Xianrui was so scared that her hand trembled, and the foundation establishment pill almost fell out of the air. At this time, she already knew that the other party must be a foundation establishment senior, or maybe even a golden core senior. Don't resist, the cultivator said gently. Then he waved his hand, and a shiny talisman flew out from his hand and slowly floated to Xiao Xianrui's forehead. Talisman? Xiao Xianrui saw this, and was even more sure of her guess. However, she was still nervous. She really didn't understand why the senior, who didn't know whether he was a foundation establishment senior or a golden core senior, didn't let her build her foundation. When the talisman disappeared on Xiao Xianrui's forehead, Xiao Xianrui suddenly found that her condensed true qi had stopped condensing. Of course, the condensed true qi didn't melt back into true qi. This is... Xiao Xianrui's face showed a trace of surprise. Poor child. The cultivator sighed. He waved his hand, and a jade slip flew to Xiao Xianrui. He smiled and said, Take a look. Yes, this junior knows. Xiao Xianrui took the jade slip and read it with her spiritual sense. Her face changed and she murmured, There is such a talisman in the world? The peak of qi refining. It's really incredible. Then she immediately bowed and saluted. This junior thanks senior for helping me. Please give me a name. This junior will never forget it. Alas, forget it. It's just a name. Don't mention it. The cultivator waved his sleeve and said sadly, Hurry back to Weeping Moon City. Don't let a third person know about what happened today. Xiao Xianrui was suspicious. She gritted her teeth and said, Yes, this junior swears that I will never tell a third person. However, if senior doesn't give me a name, this junior will never return to the city. What does it have to do with me, whether you return or not? The cultivator sneered. He turned around and flew far away in a flash. Senior, Xiao Xianrui shouted. She also urged her spiritual power to chase after him. Unfortunately, her flying technique was not good. The true qi in her meridians had just condensed into true qi. How could she catch up with him? She only chased for 10 feet, but he had disappeared. Alas, which senior is this? Xiao Xianrui looked into the distance blankly and said to herself, If he has a relationship with my 100 Herbs Gate, how could he be so cruel and merciless and kill so many of my disciples? Oh, could it be that he is friends with Father? Xiao Xianrui's heart suddenly jumped. But there is a cultivator with such a cultivation. I have never heard Father mention him before. He can help people to build their foundation and give them the spiritual accumulation talisman. Such a powerful person. How could Father know him? Xiao Xianrui had a myriad of thoughts in her mind. She then helplessly landed on a mountain peak and replenished the true qi in her meridians. Only then did she fly up and head towards Weeping Moon City. After Xiao Xianrui flew away, a slender figure appeared on the mountain peak. It was Xiao Hua. Senior sister, I'm sorry for destroying your magic weapon. If there is a chance in the future, I will give you a magic weapon. Looking gently at the place where Xiao Xianrui disappeared, Xiao Hua said in a low voice, perhaps the next time we meet will be when I destroy the 100 Herbs Gate. At that time, senior sister won't have to bear the humiliation anymore. Then Xiao Hua also flew up. However, he flew very slowly, as if he was escorting Xiao Xianrui back to the city. Oh, by the way, Heavenly Demon Sect, what kind of sect is it? Is it a demonic cultivator? Xiao Hua thought doubtfully as he flew. Why did senior sister say that when she saw me take out the demonic weapon? With Xiao Hua's escort, Xiao Xianrui naturally returned to Weeping Moon City safely. Xiao Hua was still worried. When Xiao Xianrui entered the teleportation formation of Weeping Moon City, he waved his hand and stopped a spirit camel carriage to return to the inn. When Xiao Hua returned to the inn, the full moon had already risen. Without waiting for him to enter the inn, Qian Diheng rushed out from the inn, grabbed Xiao Hua's arm, and scolded. Junior brother Xiao, where did you go? Why didn't you say anything when you went out? The auction was about to start, but I didn't see you. Then, without waiting for Xiao Hua's explanation, the three of them hurriedly got on the spirit camel carriage. Xiao Hua got on the spirit camel carriage and scanned with his divine sense. He saw that there was no sign of Fan Yi among the waiters in the inn. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. I was thinking about covering my tracks and forgot. Fan Yi of this inn must have met Wan Jianming of Wan's shop. How could they not tell me in advance? It's really troublesome. However, he immediately felt relieved. Although my name has changed, it's understandable. Presumably, they won't think too much about it. As for my appearance, I'm not a female cultivator. I'm afraid those men will only talk about senior sister and Jiang Yan. How is it possible for you to recall my appearance? Looking at Jiang Yan's attitude towards senior sister, I know how senior sister endured humiliation in 100 Herbs Gate. Alas, my cultivation isn't enough to deal with 100 Herbs Gate. Now there's also 100 Flowers Valley. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and thought again. Senior sister, when we meet again, it'll be the time when I save you from the fire pit. It'll also be the time when I destroy 100 Herbs Gate. Humph, if 100 Flowers Valley doesn't know what's good for them, I definitely won't be lenient. Senior sister, just bear with it for a few more years. Junior brother Xiao, where did you go? Sun Shu saw Xiao Hua pondering and asked quietly. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I didn't go anywhere. I just walked around Chiua City and came across a refining shop. I bought some materials. Xiao Hua took out some materials for Qian Diheng and the others to see. Hee, junior brother Xiao, you should put these things away. Qian Diheng was obviously not interested. Why did you buy these? Do you really want to make your own furnace? Although Swallow Thunder Ridge doesn't get along with Myriad Thunder Valley, refining magic tools is their responsibility. You only need to give them to Shocking Thunder Palace. You don't need to see them directly. I just thought it was interesting. It said that that place is cheap, so I thought about it. Alas, you can't delay business. Sun Shu said somewhat reproachfully. The auction has a time limit. If you're late, you won't be able to enter. Sorry, I know I was wrong. Xiao Hua bowed. Chapter 1698. Listening to Sun Shu and Qian Diheng's complaints, Xiao Hua could only smile bitterly. He just saw that he had plenty of time, so He went to Wanji's shop to buy some refining materials, preparing to refine it himself. He didn't think that it would take long. Who would have thought that he would meet Xiao Xinrui? He would not have thought that Xiao Xinrui was also at the peak of the 12th level of qi refining and was looking for the opportunity to build her foundation. Naturally, for Xiao Xinrui's foundation building, Xiao Hua would not regret not going to the auction, not to mention that he tried to help Xiao Xinrui build her foundation and succeeded in one strike. The joy of being able to help his former senior sister had already made him throw aside the resentment of Qian Diheng and Qian Diheng. The spirit camel carriage traveled for the time it took to burn a stick of incense and stopped in front of a rather large building. At this time, the night was getting darker, and the whole building, except for a few lights, was completely submerged in the night. At first glance, it looked like a terrifying giant beast. "Oh, I'm afraid it's too late." Sun Shu frowned, looking at the cold courtyard of the tall building, and whispered, "It's too late." Sun Shu and Qian Diheng were chatting, and Kun Fian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "The auction may not have what we want. Tomorrow let's go to EG, or the shop to have a look." Qian Diheng looked at Kun Fian strangely and said, "Everything in the shop is normal. If you want to find something good, you can only find it in the auction." Fellow Taoists, the auction has already begun. Please return to your seats. Wait for the next auction in a month. Before the four people walked to the door, a city guard came out from the dark door. Seeing the four people's cultivation, he did not dare to neglect, and after bowing, he said respectfully, "Haha, fellow cultivator." Qian Diheng laughed, took a few steps forward, and affectionately held the other person's hand and said, "I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and I just came to Chiua City. I have long admired the reputation of the auction in Chiua City, so I hurriedly took the spirit camel carriage here. You see, didn't the spirit camel carriage just leave? Moreover, we're going to another place to gain experience tomorrow, so we need to participate in the auction. I'm afraid we won't be able to make it in a month. Fellow cultivator, please make an exception." With that said, Qian Diheng's other hand moved slightly, and a few spirit stones were quietly stuffed into the hands of the city guard. The city guard hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "So you're a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I've been disrespectful. Since they have come from afar and are in urgent need of training, it would be unethical of me to stop them. Fortunately, although the four of you are late, the magic treasures for today's finale have yet to arrive. The four of you are really lucky. Please." As the guard spoke, he discreetly put away the spirit stone and moved to the side, leaving an empty space. "Haha, thank you, fellow Taoist." Qian Diheng nodded with a smile. Without stopping, he hurried in. Xiao Hua and the others also cupped their hands with a smile and followed in. Sun Shu walked past the city guard and said in a low voice, "A transcendent artifact actually appeared in the auction in Weeping Moon City? May I know what this magic treasure is?" When the city guard heard that, he was very proud and said with a smile, "Magic treasures often appear in our Weeping Moon City's auctions. Even the worst of them are high-grade magic tools. As for what kind of magic treasure will appear today, I also don't know. Fellow Taoists, please go inside and take a look." When the four of them entered, they found themselves in an extremely bright hall. This hall was not circular, but strangely polygonal. On each side of the hall, there were several small triangular doors. These small doors were overflowing with light, and there were also fluctuations of spiritual power. It was obvious that there was a restriction placed on them. "Seniors, please hurry up and follow this junior into the auction hall." Seeing someone come in, the several children standing in the hall were slightly stunned. Immediately, four children came out from the crowd, walked in front of the four people, and said respectfully. Xiao Hua followed a little girl to a small triangular door in the hall. That little girl said respectfully, "Senior, if you go through this small door, you'll find a temporary magic array. Inside the magic array, you can't use your magic power. Senior can change the maze inside. After you go out of the magic array, you will find a corridor about 10 feet long. After you go through the corridor, you will arrive at the auction hall. Senior, please hurry up. These small doors are about to close. Xiao Hua slightly turned his head. Sun Shu and the other two were not far from him. They were all standing at a small door, so he nodded and said, I know. Thank you for your guidance. After saying that, he cupped his hands and stepped through the small door. Just as Xiao Hua and the others stepped through the small door, several cultivators who looked like city guards of Chiua City surrounded a cultivator wearing a maze. They hurriedly came in from outside the door. Although they couldn't see the cultivation level of that cultivator, there was actually a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator among these city guards. That cultivator was very respectful to this maze cultivator. Presumably, this cultivator's cultivation level wasn't lower than the foundation establishment realm. The several people entered from a small door in the corner of the hall. None of the children in the hall went up to greet them, and there wasn't a trace of surprise on their faces. At this time, Xiao Hua had already put on the maze, but after leaving the restriction, he found that the corridor wasn't empty. Instead, there was a seventh-layer qi refining cultivator quietly waiting there. When he saw Xiao Hua come out, he went up and said with a smile, Senior, is this your first time participating in Chiua City's auction? Xiao Hua nodded and said yes. The cultivator took out 3 things from his storage bag. One was a jade slip, one was a token, and the last one was a stick. He handed it over and said with a smile, This token is the number that Senior used to participate in today's auction. It was randomly arranged and didn't follow any order. Moreover, the number is only revealed after Senior has read the jade slip and injected your magic power into it. As for this competition wood, it is used by Senior during the auction. It is a set with this token. It's so complicated? Xiao Hua was slightly surprised, but then he was happy. Only such a complicated method could prove the completeness of Chiua City's auction and ensure the safety of the bidding cultivators. Naturally, it could make the participating cultivators feel relieved. After receiving the 3 things, Xiao Hua immersed his divine sense into the jade slip. He roughly understood that the incantation was very simple, but it could be used. While walking through the corridor, Xiao Hua imprinted the incantation on the token according to the instructions. Number 422. There was a flash of brilliance on Xiao Hua's token, but the number didn't flash on the token. As the jade slip said, only the holder of the token knows about this token. Others can't see it with their naked eyes or divine sense. More than 400 people, it's not much different from the number of cultivators participating in Yenyuan City's auction. Xiao Hua thought to himself. He had already passed through the corridor. Xiao Hua didn't have time to test the usage of the competition wood. He passed through the light screen at the end of the corridor and entered the auction hall. When he saw the situation inside the hall, he couldn't help but be stunned. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel? We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.